Chapter 526, Poison Antidote. After the class the next morning, Harry told his friends who he believed to be reliable about the assignment Dumbledore gave him. Ryan listened to Harry in the common room with Hermione, except for the tasks and Dumbledore's attitude towards Harry's hearing of Malfoy and Snape's conversation. Slughorn must be determined to hide the truth of the year. If even Dumbledore can't get the memories now, you are unlikely to get those memories. Lane is not optimistic about Harry's this time, he said outspokenly. As for the Horcrux, I must say that the mysterious man is worthy of being a powerful and extremely evil Dark Lord, who was able to take this problem into consideration at that age and try to access such dangerous knowledge. Even if it's hard, I have to wait. You said you know what a Horcrux. Harry looked at Ryan in surprise. Yes. Ryan nodded slightly and continued. As an alchemist, I do know Horcrux, a very partial and evil alchemy product. Now that the principal has let you know about the existence of Horcrux, it means that I can tell you something. After clearing his throat, Ryan said seriously. The Horcrux is a kind of alchemy prop used to contain the split soul after killing humans to split their souls. True evil. Harry shook his head in disgust. So why did Voldemort make such evil props? Could it provide him with powerful magic power? No, the Horcrux's role is to provide eternal life to the user. Looking at Harry's surprised open mouth, Ryan smiled. Aren't you interested in this thing? I understand that eternal life is for everyone. All attractive. Of course not. Harry interrupted Ryan's laugh and said firmly, this is too evil. More than that, the sequelae are still very large. Ryan continued, according to the existing data, users often slice their brains by the way when slicing their souls. You see that the mysterious man will be completely lost in the later period, the wisdom and attractiveness of youth. At the same time, the sliced soul may form another person after meeting certain conditions. Due to the evil of the Horcrux, this new self and the original self cannot coexist friendly. In the end, only one survived. Then, what else do you know about Horcruxes? Harry was a little uncomfortable listening to this sentence, and he thought of himself and Voldemort's prophecy. So quickly urged Ryan to continue to speak. Hide a part in an object outside the body. In this way, even if the body of the Horcrux user is attacked or destroyed, he cannot die, because there is a part of the soul left in the world, unharmed. Of course this form of existence is not as good as ghosts, and not many people are willing to live that way. Ryan said the last key point. So, that Voldemort we encountered in the first grade is in that state. The mist that flew out after Chilo died. Harry recalled the Voldemort he saw in the first grade. Yes, Ryan nodded. In theory, one person can only make one Horcrux. But I can tell you that Dumbledore and I have destroyed more Horcruxes than this number. I think Dumbledore, the task that Professor Legio gave you should be to hope you can figure out how many Horcruxes the mysterious man made. But how did I get that memory? After listening to Ryan's explanation of the Horcrux, Harry looked even more frustrated. He didn't think he could make Slughorn tell such important things on his own. But he now knows the danger of the Horcrux, and feels that Ryan is risking his life to fight on the front line. Voldemort's opponent in his prediction must never do nothing. I don't know. Ryan shrugged because he had cleared Aragog a long time ago, so at the Aragog funeral in the original text, after Slughorn drank high, the truth revealed that this matter was not. It may have happened. But Ryan thinks he still has something to tell Harry. Since you already know what a Horcrux is, then you must also know that Professor Slughorn definitely wants to cover up this matter in front of people. So you don't ask directly he. Of course. Harry nodded bitterly. It seems that he is probably one of the culprits that caused Voldemort. How could it be directly asked in this case? At this time, Harry probably guessed exactly what Dumbledore had been running around recently. It should be to find other Horcruxes. But he will never say this. In the following time, Harry again said that Dumbledore believed that the conversation between Snape and Malfoy that Harry heard was not important, and the principal once again confirmed his trust in Snape. Ryan and Hermione can only comfort at this time that President Harry Dumbledore may have his own arrangements that need to be kept secret. Ryan was a bit confused about what Professor Dumbledore wanted to do, because he wouldn't die this year, and he didn't understand why he let Malfoy do things. Obviously Hermione also had doubts. After Harry left, she turned around and asked Ryan directly, what do you think our headmaster planned? I don't believe Dumbledore can't see that Malfoy is doing something for the mysterious man now thing, and it will affect Hogwarts. It may be that our principal wants to set a trap for the mysterious person. You must know that the conspiracy can only cause powerful harm when it is unknown to you. Now, according to Harry, our principal should know this. That's why you don't have to worry about that. Ryan comforted Hermione. Of course he thought so. But just in case. He was still on Malfoy's disappearing cabinet that had been repaired in the past 2 days and the whole room where there was a request. Harry seemed to have said these things to Ron and Ginny, but it seemed that Ron and they couldn't come up with any good ideas. Because Harry still seemed very distressed these 2 days, often scratching his hair helplessly. Ryan even worried that Harry would make him bald before middle age. If you know that there is no cure for baldness in the magic world, otherwise Slughorn, who is a top potionist, will not let himself be like that. www.mplnovel.com. Now that we have talked about the potions class, we have to say that in the new section of the potions class, Slughorn made new tricks. Unlike Snape, who likes to let everyone cook potions step by step, Slughorn prefers to let everyone learn how to apply these potions in life. For example, in the new class, he sent a bottle to every student in the classroom to make everyone make an antidote for mixing poison in the bottle. According to Gobelot's third law, the antidote for mixed poisons is greater than the sum of the antidote for each individual component. There are more than a dozen poisons in a bottle of medicine. It seems that today's classroom task is a big project. Hermione whispered around her that she had always been a little uncomfortable with Harry's simple copying but had a higher grade in her potion class than her, because she had always hated speculation. This time she felt that she finally had a chance to beat Harry. Not so complicated, Ryan reminded. One dungstone is enough. The poison here is not so powerful. Shut up. Hermione turned her head to stare at Ryan. What is the difference between Harry and I if I want to do this? Lane shrugged helplessly. Hermione was stubborn in some aspects. She would stick to her heart and flexibly deal with important matters. But in daily life she is still as rigid as in the past. But Hermione Lane like this is not annoying, because sticking to principles is not a bad thing. Then I can only wish you good luck. Ryan said that he started to busy himself. Of course, he would not use Bezoar, which is little technical content. As an alchemist, he has a better way. Chapter 527, Potion Lesson. After receiving the poison, the vast majority of people poured it into the crucible and heated it, but only Hermione and the entire classroom can now master Scarpin's visible spell, and use this spell to correctly analyze the composition of the potion. Ryan used another method to solve the problem. He first took out dozens of medicinal herbs from the cabinet according to his own poison, and then used the power of nature and alchemy to restore them to a dozen seeds, and finally combined these dozens of seeds into a soybean-sized translucent seed like emeralds. Oh, my God! After more than half an hour, Slughorn was completely attracted when he walked over to Ryan's pot. Ryan had already put that seed into the crucible, and this time a tree like a transparent small tree cast by crystal. There are more than a dozen leaves on the small tree, and the color of each leaf is different, but the color of these leaves is fading. In addition, only half of the pot of completely transparent liquid remains in the crucible. This is alchemy. There is also natural power. After wielding his wand to release some magic, Slughorn finally figured out what was in front of him. Create a pseudo-living alchemy tree, restore the mixed poison through the alchemy power in the trunk, and make every leaf on this tree an antidote. Then use this alchemy tree separation function to let each poison enter among the corresponding leaves. The antidote composition on different leaves finally neutralizes all the poisons. I have to admit that you have given me enough surprises in some ways. Speaking of this, the little crystal-like tree became completely transparent, and then turned into a pale yellow liquid with a slight bitter almond scent and fell into the pot. Slughorn suspended the crucible with his wand for everyone to see. Look, please, this is the theoretically best result after our lesson. All the medicaments have been reacted whether they are poisons or antidote, and only completely non-toxic and harmless ingredients are left in the pot. Can be consumed by people. Of course, I need to remind everyone that Mr. Liang's methods are unavailable to others. After the show, Slughorn put down the crucible and said to the busy classmates, the most troublesome part of mixing potions is that when the poisons are mixed together, they can transform various irrelevant ingredients into a large number of new magical mixtures through an almost alchemy reaction. Mr. Liang can use alchemy if you don't master alchemy skills, then the book has analysis of all the reaction components and the configuration of targeted antidote at once is your only feasible solution. Ryan looked around the classroom at this time, and found that except for Hermione who successfully separated the components of the poison and began to configure the antidote in turn, everyone else was faced with a strange face and a variety of strange flavors and crucible of strange smoke. At the end of the class, Hermione finally prepared her mixed antidote. Ryan found that the antidote in her crucible was earthy yellow, and she kept blowing bubbles, which looked like mud. Full 52 ingredients, and even my hair in it. Today I can definitely surpass Harry's copybook guy. After discovering Ryan looking at herself, Hermione simply came over and said in a slightly upward tone. It seemed that she had been unhappy with Harry's act of copying the book to the first place for a long time. In fact, Hermione doesn't hate the practice of learning other people's knowledge. You must know that Hermione can now complete this antidote in a short period of time because she learned a lot of new knowledge in the process of co-adventuring and communicating with Ryan. It can only be done, so she doesn't resent anyone learning a better way, even if it is not authoritative. It's just that Harry's style of just copying the book but not using his mind to think and learn really makes her uncomfortable. Not necessarily. Ryan just now saw Harry running out of the drug storage room next to him, as if clutching something back to his crucible. Some things are more than I can think of. When Hermione had just said something, Slughorn came down from the podium and slowly walked around the classroom. After circumventing a lot of antidote that seemed to be more deadly than poison, he scooped it up with a small spoon Hermione's antidote and praised her. Very good, Miss Granger, it seems that you have fully understood the knowledge in the book and have some understanding of yourself. This antidote is doing very well. But Hermione was not pleased with this praise. After seeing the dung-stone in Harry's open palm, Slughorn froze for more than 10 seconds, then picked up the dung-stone and held it high to show the classmates. "Oh, it really looks like your mother. I can't judge you wrong. Surely the dung-stone can solve all these potions. This is the independent spirit that a real potionist needs." The chubby potion professor turned a little funny, and then said to all the students in the class, "If you have a dung-stone, then of course it works. However, because it is not poisonous, and it is rare, so it's useful to know how to formulate antidote." Tingle bell. The bell rang after school. Slughorn stopped. "Okay, everyone can pack up and leave class. By the way, add 20 points to Gryffindor for Ryan's superb skills and Harry's brave adventure." "It's just..." Hermione opened her mouth slightly, and she couldn't believe it. This is clearly the classroom, where to learn knowledge. Is that Harry's speculation? It's a bit. Lay nodded. "But you can't deny that the method Harry has mastered is also a method, and it is very practical in first aid after poisoning." "Well, you are right." Hermione looked a little helpless. "Fortunately, he also gave you extra points, at least to give everyone a correct guide." Speaking of this, Hermione saw Ryan standing there motionless after she finished packing, and asked, "Why don't you leave now that the class is over?" "I have something to ask the professor for help." "You can go to the classroom for the next class first, and I'll come right away." Soon, only Slughorn and Ryan were left in the classroom. Watching Ryan standing there, Slughorn kindly said, while buckling the gold buckle of his dragon leather briefcase, "Hurry up, Ryan, you are going to be late for the next class." "Mr. www.mplnovel.com, I want to ask you something," Ryan said in a slightly flattering tone. "Then ask quickly, my dear child. I will be happy to provide some help for a smart student like you. Please ask." "Sir, I know you are a very powerful potion master. Can you introduce me to places or people who can buy good raw materials?" "That's right. I should have thought of it." Slughorn stopped himself to pack things. "It's true that some precious materials students are difficult to get, but I think your alchemy level is likely to need some precious materials." "Yes," Slughorn said after thinking for a few seconds. "I will introduce you to some of my best friends at the next Slug Club meeting. You can buy things from them in the future." "Then thank you so much." Ryan bowed. This time he wanted to thank Professor Slughorn from the bottom of his heart. With the help of the professor, the progress of his purchase speed research will inevitably be greatly accelerated. After all, even if Dumbledore has to help, as a principal, he is certainly not as familiar with these shopping paths as Professor Slughorn, who deals with all kinds of people all day. Not to mention Slughorn is a professor of potions. He himself needs these things. Naturally, there will be many purchase channels for precious alchemy materials. After the materials are ready, Ryan can start his manufacturing plan of Our Lady of the Roses, which will provide a solid guarantee for his survival in the war. Chapter 528, New Course. In the following period, everything was normal. Mobile phone https://Dumbledore did not find Ryan to go to Ling. Maybe he has not found a suitable time. At this time, Ryan mixed some basic materials for the production of Our Lady of Roses into the list of raw materials for alchemy props and sent a list to Dumbledore, and attached the gold coins. Although Dumbledore is not in school, he can still control everything in the school. On the third day after posting the list and gold coins, Ryan got up and received a large box from Dumbledore through the house elf in the school, which contained hundreds of different kinds of not-so-good foundations for Ryan. Raw materials and a few precious raw materials. Slughorn's channels were also good. After one club, Ryan met several well-informed people. In just a week, he bought half of the precious and rare raw materials he needed, but the other half needed good luck to collect all of them. Because those things didn't have a stable source of access, and the wizards only occasionally harvest part. Of course, with such a purchase, Ryan's gallon also blew out. Fortunately, the people introduced by Slughorn agreed to pay directly with gold ingots, jewelry, precious raw materials or alchemy products, so that there was no deficit in Ryan's finances. Although things are still not complete, the materials needed for the first step are already complete. After all the first batch of materials arrived, Ryan counted and came to this conclusion. It should be possible to start construction now, and in order that this stone can be used in various worlds in the future, it can only be made in the Wanji grocery store. After going to bed that night, Ryan went to Wanji grocery store and started to do the first step. "I have been busy in Wanji grocery store for 3 months, with the full technical support of teacher Luo Zhen. The first step of the production process is finally complete. The 4 mouths are in a crucible at the 4 corners of a large alchemy array. The liquids of 4 colors of red, yellow, blue and green are rolling, and these liquids are like crystals." After instructing Xiaoqing to be optimistic about the pots in this magic circle, Ryan went to the world of the Lord of the Rings and slept for a week before relaxing. This is the world's overall environment suitable for rest. Surrounded by the breath of nature, it can quickly smooth Ryan's problems caused by fatigue. If you change to a world where the ecosystem is basically finished like the radiating world, Ryan feels that this consciousness may need to sleep for half a year. After finishing everything, he returned to his bed. Next depends on luck. I hope those materials will be available as soon as possible. In the following time, Ryan began to make all kinds of things that might be needed to go to Ling Pavilion. In the midst of being busy, time entered February. The snow around the school melted and replaced by the cold and damp. Grey purple clouds pressed low over the castle, and the continuous cold rain made the lawn slippery and muddy. The whole weather is as bad as the situation outside. However, this does not mean that there is nothing good. For example, the first phantom visualization class that required 6th grade students to be outdoors in the damp wind was moved from the playground to the auditorium. This class was arranged on Saturday morning to avoid delay in regular courses. When Ryan and Hermione came to the auditorium, they found that the people had almost arrived. For teaching convenience, the tables have been put away. The rain was knocking on the window, and the magic ceiling was covered with black rain clouds. The 4 deans were standing at the front of the auditorium at this time. In addition, there was a wizard with white skin, transparent eyelashes and slender hair standing beside the deans. He should be the instructor of the Phantom Visualization class from the Ministry of Magic. 2. Good morning, said the wizard of the Ministry of Magic when everyone was ready. My name is Waikiki Takros, and I will be your instructor in the Phantom Visualization class for the next 12 weeks, hoping to help you prepare for the Phantom Appearance examination. The whole introduction process was unstoppable, and even that Waikiki Takros seemed too calm. Even if Professor McGonagall scolded Malfoy who tried to argue with Gower, his speech was not interrupted. After making a lot of wooden circles, Takros told everyone about the 3-dimensional principle of phantom appearance, and then let everyone start trying. After waiting for my order to rotate in place, let yourself be in the void, and act calmly. Now listen to my password. Ryan looked at the students around him and found out everyone seemed to want them so quickly the phantom appeared surprised. 1 2 3. Everyone turned around in the same place. As a result, most people just turned around to make them stand unsteady. Even people like Neville who didn't have a good sense of balance directly fell to the ground. The professors didn't think that someone could succeed at once, but the 2 cracking sounds that appeared at the same time, and the very crackling sound that exploded like firecrackers broke their cognition. They were surprised to see that Ryan and Hermione's bodies disappeared after only a half turn, and then appeared in the wood circle in front of them. Very good. Takros' tone increased slightly. Maybe this is how he likes a calm person to express his surprise. Like these 2 gentlemen and young ladies, they always focus on the phantom. Don't panic and calm down on the goal. Now please put the wooden circle and stand back. The next few people except Ryan and Hermione just turned around in place, but the 6th time, Dean Thomas entered the wooden circle, but left his left arm in place, which attracted all exclaimed people. Fortunately, the deans gathered around for the first time. After a burst of purple smoke, his arm was healed. After finding out that his arm was fine, Dean told his surroundings with his eyebrows. Okay, keep quiet. Professor McGonagall gave Dean a dissatisfied glance, and after everyone regained silence, Waikiki Takros began to explain lightly. Split, that is, the separation of a part of the body, occurring when the determination is not firm enough. It is also one of the most prone problems for novices. So I remind everyone again that you must focus your attention. But after an hour, the other people have made no progress. Takros does not seem discouraged. He put on his cloak and just said, see you next Saturday, everyone. Don't forget, goal, determination, calmness. Afterwards, a wave of the magic wand eliminated those wooden circles and followed Professor McGonagall out of the auditorium. Harry, what's the matter with you? Harry hurriedly left the auditorium as soon as the course ended. Until an hour later, when Ryan and Hermione returned from the alchemy laboratory, they met Harry and Ron whispering together in the common room. What did you do just so fast? Just like what news did the paparazzi find? Ryan asked after sitting directly on the sofa opposite Harry. What did you find out during the class just now? It was clear before class. www.mplnovel.com. That's the way. Harry explained. I heard Malfoy in the Phantom Shift class really doing it now. What? Crabbe and Goyle are sending him a whistle. This matter of Malfoy should be very important, because Crabbe and Goyle are just sentry outside. They know nothing about what Malfoy is doing now. It sounds like a conspiracy is brewing. Even Hermione admitted it. As the principal of Hogwarts, Dumbledore couldn't help not knowing what happened in the castle. I'm curious why he didn't take care of it. So I think I should figure out what Malfoy is doing, Harry said firmly. Harry did say that. He checked the live map as often as possible for the next 2 weeks, and sometimes went to the bathroom unnecessarily during the class, but never found Malfoy in a suspicious place. He actually saw Crabbe and Goyle alone in the castle for more time than usual, and sometimes stopped in the empty hallway motionless, but at that time Malfoy was not only not nearby, but he could not be found on the map. At this time he could only assume that Malfoy was mixed up with hundreds of dense names. Ryan and Hermione look busy and should be doing things for the Order of the Phoenix. I still don't want to disturb them anymore. Harry did want to ask Ryan if they could do anything, but finally thought of this and gave up. Chapter 529, Ling Pavilion. After the dinner on the last day of February, Ryan and Hermione just entered the library to prepare for their homework in the library. Suddenly a fire flashed over the table in front of them, and a tightly rolled parchment paper suddenly appeared on the table. "Is President Dumbledore looking for you?" Hermione turned around and asked, because the fire was just too obvious. At first glance, it was known that the Phoenix was sending things, and the only Phoenix in the entire castle was Dumbledore's fox is gone. It should be. Ryan lowered his head and opened the rolled parchment, and found a few lines written in slender, tangled fonts. "Please bring the things you prepared before to the principal's office. We should start." The password is chocolate gold coins. At the best time, Ryan said goodbye to Hermione, and asked her to bring her textbooks back to the common room, and then quickly ran upstairs to the principal's office. When he opened the door with a password and walked up the spiral staircase, the oak door opened, and Ryan found that besides Dumbledore wearing a purple robe sitting on the chair he usually sat on, Sirius was also wearing it. The rather formal robe appeared to sit a little more rigidly in another chair. "Good evening, Principal Dumbledore." "Good evening, Sirius." Lane first greeted the two in the office. We are going now to take Voldemort's Horcruxes in the vault of Bella." Professor Dumbledore nodded. "Because I got solid evidence today. Voldemort took Bella and 2 other Death Eaters to go to Greece to work. They have now left the UK and I can guarantee that we will not be directly touched by them when we are looking for something." "But how do we get in a moment? Is it an attack or an infiltration?" Ryan asked. "Neither." Dumbledore shook his head slightly. "You don't need to talk for a while. I have a great way to break through most of the guards in front. Of course, this needs Sirius's help, which is why I called him today." "I'm glad to help you in such an important matter, Professor Dumbledore." Xeotian nodded slightly. After making sure everyone was ready, Professor Dumbledore stood up behind the table, and then let Sirius hold his hand, and Lane held Sirius' hand. "We are now using Fox to go to Diagon Alley, so you two have a good grasp." After Ryan and Sirius nodded, Phoenix Fox flew from the shelf to Dumbledore's empty hand. After a flash of fire flashed over, the three disappeared from the principal's office. When the fire in front of him disappeared, Ryan discovered that they had appeared in an unobtrusive corner of Diagon Alley. After tidying up their clothes, they began to walk towards the direction of Ling Pavilion. The facade of Ling Pavilion is different from all the shops on this street. It is built with white marble. If it wasn't distorted, this building could even be called magnificent. Of course, even if the whole building is crooked, Ling Pavilion is still standing high above the surrounding shops, and it stands out in this street. Even at this time it was already evening. The bronze gate of Ling Pavilion was still gleaming. A very little goblin dressed like a day dressed in a scarlet uniform just as if he had just been ironed stood there. When he saw Ryan they came over. They bowed politely and opened the door. Ryan used to come to Ling Pavilion only once a year on average. In his impression, every time he came to Ling Pavilion, he always walked through the short corridor, spent more than 10 minutes huddling with a group of people, and then you have to pass several tests before you can go to the counter to handle the business you need. If you want to put it outside, this service attitude bank has long since closed. The reason why Ling Pavilion is so prosperous is that there is only one bank in the wizarding world. Fortunately, today they used excuses to work with Sirius, so that they could avoid a lot of queuing and other problems faced by ordinary wizards. Sirius, as the patriarch of the Black family, is naturally able to enjoy the special services opened by the Ling Pavilion to the pureblood family. As the three of them just stepped into the hall, an old goblin wearing monocles and a tuxedo greeted them. "Ah, respected Principal Dumbledore, Mr. Black and this young gentleman. Is there anything I can help you with?" The goblin walked in front of her and bowed deeply. Even the big nose almost touched the floor. "That's it." Sirius stepped forward and said, "I have something in the family treasure house that I need to trade with this young partner, and since the things I want to give him are very precious and the young man is still in school, his principal Mr. Dumbledore will serve as witnesses are witnessing our transactions, so we now want to enter my vault." "Of course, no problem." The old goblin nodded. "Then please show your proof." Sirius pulled out a golden key inlaid with emeralds from his arms. The old goblin nodded slightly after examining it, then bowed again. "The key is fine, we can start right away." When he finished, he gently clapped his hands, and a younger goblin came over. "I'm going to use Ding Dang," the older goblin said to him. The young goblin left quickly, and soon took a small leather bag to the older goblin. The small bag seemed to be filled with dingy metal. Okay, please come with me, three distinguished gentlemen," the elf said, turning around and leading the way ahead. "I will take you to the vault of the Black family." Soon he took Ryan and the three of them through the hall sandwiched by a lot of counters. Ryan noticed at this time that, unlike what he saw during the daytime, only 3 or 2 fairies behind the counter were sitting there weighing precious stones or precious metals. Yawning, far less than the staff during the day. Soon they passed the door at the back of the hall and came to a rough stone corridor with burning torches lighting www.mplnovel.com. But Ryan found that these torches were not the usual torches at all. They each one is a magic prop. "Did you find any problems with the torches?" Sirius said as he watched Ryan staring at the torches. "I was also curious why I had such a simple torch in a place like Ling Pavilion for the first time. But at that time my cousin Andromeda, the mother of Tonks, told me that these torches are some precious magic props. As long as the magic power is injected once, these flames will last for a whole year. Really, Ryan didn't know what to say at this time. Even if it was far away from the Cub Life Fairy Fire, but it would not be cheap as long as it was attached to magic props. Ryan didn't expect this group of goblins to be so rich. The goblin who received Ryan blew a whistle at the hole in front, and a small cart rolled along the track from the darkness. The 4 people with the goblin could just fill this car. The underground vault of our Ling Pavilion is the safest treasure trove. In the future, you can choose us to keep your wealth for you. After the car started, the goblin sitting in front of him started chattering. He mainly aimed at Ryan, because there are not many students who can be a partner of a pureblood family and let Dumbledore accompany him to do things. In his impression, Ryan did not handle any financial business in Ling Pavilion. So the goblin took advantage of this opportunity to try to bring business to Ling. As for the fact that Ryan is not a pureblood wizard, the goblin does not value it. After all, for them, gold is the same regardless of a human lineage. If it were not for international secrecy laws, they were even willing to do business with moles. Chapter 530, Treasury. In the dark tunnel, a small car quickly moved along the track in the tunnel. At the same time, there were sharp shouts from the car, and even overwhelmed the sound of the car clicking and the wind in the ears of everyone. This is the fairy sitting in the driver's seat constantly bragging about the safety of the Ling Pavilion. Don't see that you can get here all the way smoothly, because you have proof of identity. Otherwise, you shouldn't even think about being able to enter the heavily guarded underground entrance here. Be aware that there is a large area of land nearby. With protective spells and exploratory spells, it is simply impossible to get past those defenses by other means. But even if the goblin sitting in front advertises endlessly, Ryan is determined not to store anything truly valuable in this place. Because the fairy's morality is really unbelievable. Think about it. In the last book of the novel, after Harry met the staff of Goulinge, he took out the short sword of Gryffindor and seduced him. Get all the information about Ling Pavilion. And in theory, the employees of the financial industry should be completely confidential. Lane even suspected that the magic stone of the first grade could be stored quietly in Ling Pavilion for so long, completely because the reputation and strength of Dumbledore and Natalie were indeed strong enough. Otherwise, because of the greed and morality of the goblins, Ryan felt that they were likely to find a goblin as a scapegoat, and directly declare that a certain employee of the Ling Pavilion had defected with the magic stone. Sirius couldn't stand the chatter of the goblin beside him. He said directly to the goblin sitting in front of him, "Is it absolutely safe? So can you explain what happened to the safest underground vault that was broken into by someone a few years ago?" Well, the goblin who was driving looked a little hesitant. "Well, at least we didn't lose anything, did we?" But in this way, the goblin finally closed his chattering mouth, and everyone's ears were also cleaned a lot. Ryan took time to look around and found that the car was driving deep underground. They kept making sharp turns between the stalactites and descending to an unexpected depth. Because Ryan came in through normal channels, the journey was different from Harry's in the novel. For example, they never encountered the anti-thief waterfall. Think about it, too. Those who can enter the underground vaults are big figures with identities. You can't let them pour a pot of water every time they come in. Finally, after 10 minutes or so, this car, which was almost as bumpy as the roller coaster, slowed down. Then he stopped against a small stone platform. The sharp voice of the goblin sounded again. "Okay, gentlemen, our car can only drive here as far as it can go. Then we need everyone to walk over with our feet. It's about 3,000 meters underground." Lane thought about the speed and driving time quietly, but to his surprise, the temperature at this depth should be more than 50 degrees Celsius in theory. But now Ryan felt that there might not even be 20 degrees here, and there was a damp breath in the air. However, the temperature started to rise not too far along the corridor. After turning a small angle, Ryan saw the culprit causing the temperature to rise, a fire dragon. This fire dragon is very huge, at least one circle larger than the one he faced in the top 3. This means that this dragon is very powerful, because with age, the size of the fire dragon will continue to expand, and the resistance to magic spells will become more and more difficult to deal with over time. While all this is happening, its offensiveness and offensive capabilities are steadily increasing. But the dragon in front of him didn't look well. Because he was confined in the ground for too long, the scales on the dragon had become pale and loose, its eyes were turbid pink, and both hind legs were wearing heavy shackles. The thick chains on top of it connected to the giant pile that was driven deep into the stone ground. After hearing the footsteps in the corridor, it turned to Ryan and they turned their ugly heads, making a roar that made the stones tremble and spitting out a blaze. But Dumbledore, who was standing in front, just waved his old wand slightly, and a sky-blue transparent barrier appeared in front of them to block the flames for everyone. "You really deserve to be the greatest white sorcerer now," the leader's goblin said flatteringly to Dumbledore, trying to cover up the mistakes that he had not reminded everyone in time. But Sirius snorted and immediately changed the subject. "Its eyes are gone, but that makes it more brutal. But we have a way to control it." It was formed a conditioned reflex to the ding-dong film. After he finished, He took out some small metal utensils from his small purse and sent one to everyone. You shake this together. When it hears this sound, it thinks of pain and retreats, and we can open the vault door. Ryan only found out that the location of the fire dragon was a small platform at this time, and there were several gates that seemed to have very complicated carvings around the platform. At this time, Dumbledore suddenly shot to control the goblin in front, and then waved his wand to let the flame-spraying dragon fall down. Okay, we can only get here peacefully, Dumbledore explained. Before coming down, each goblin can only obtain the corresponding permission for the door that the customer requested to open. This cooling pavilion avoids theft. It's a kind of defense. So you need Ryan for the Lestrange family vault, and you don't have to worry about fire dragons and goblins. www.mplnovel.com. They are just stunned now. I will inject them later. Prepared memories. Seriously, neither the goblin nor the fire dragon is weak, especially the elves who have the authority to come here, and even the inferior Eliterer. The reason for being knocked down so quickly was simply not expecting a magician like Dumbledore in a top-level costume to suddenly attack from behind. It can only be said that he has done his best, but it is now a crime of non-war. Let's see. Ryan walked to the target vault door under the guidance of Sirius, and then waved his wand to check. It's a clever setting. Ryan murmured that during the inspection he found that the goblins had prepared an extremely elaborate power supply system in the underground vault, using the underground geothermal conversion magic array to the defense system of the entire vault provides inexhaustible magic power, which is why Lane discovered that the temperature of this underground vault is not high. There are a lot of defense and guard magic on the gate of the vault, as well as the surrounding walls. But Ryan accidentally discovered that the Black family's vault in the target vault are next door. Can this goblin let the Sirius's vault door open first? Ryan asked. It's very simple. Dumbledore nodded to restore the fire dragon and the goblin, and the goblin did not have any doubts. After the goblin opened the Black family vault, Dumbledore stunned the goblin and dragon again, and then walked into the vault. As soon as he entered the vault, he heard Ryan said in a cheerful tone, "Ha, I know that. And soon we will be able to enter Bella's vault where she holds the treasures given by the mysterious man." Chapter 531, Golden Cup. What did you find, Ryan? Dumbledore, who was entering the door, asked when he heard Ryan's cry. At this time he discovered that Sirius and Ryan were standing on a scaffold more than 3 meters high, and Ryan waved his wand to study the wall problem. Sirius stood aside and let his wand illuminate him. This is the case, Professor Dumbledore. Speaking of his professional field, Ryan seemed confident, and he raised his voice to Dumbledore under the scaffold. There are many magic defenses on the outside door and on the wall. If we want to crack, we need a lot of time. In this way, I worry that the goblins above will find it wrong. So I tried to find another way. Now it seems that my judgment is correct. After finishing, Ryan removed a huge tapestry hanging against the wall, and then stepped forward to pat the wall facing him. This wall is the wall shared by the 2 vaults of the Black family and the Lestrange family, and it is also their separation wall. The defense of this wall is much better than the defense of the outside. Under the watch of Dumbledore and Sirius, Ryan waved the spell he chanted and whipped a silver powder with a metallic glow from the space bag around his waist. After these powders adhered to the wall, they quickly turned into twisted runes under the control of magic. Soon these runes, which were as big as the bottom of the coffee cup, shrank to the size of green beans, and then became a thin silver wire coil occupies an area the size of a door. Now it's time for the next step. Looking at the masterpiece in front of him, Ryan nodded slightly, and then pulled out a black knife with a silver pattern from the space bag and began to depict it in the circle. This knife has targeted magic, and carving stones is as easy as carving on cork boards. It took 7 or 8 minutes for a 6-pointed star array with a large number of runes to appear on the wall. Ryan stepped back to check that there was no problem, and some painful took out a bottle of golden liquid from the space agent, and then guided the liquid with a magic wand to climb up the wall, filling all the grooves just carved. After finishing all this, Ryan collected everything and began to wave his wand and recite the mantra in advanced Valeria. Under the guidance of the wand, the part of the wall circled by Lane just now was completely enveloped by the mist of gold and silver light. The seemingly sturdy wall first flicked out a green light quickly under the fog, and then it's a black light with a metallic glow. As soon as the light broke away from the wall, it formed a sphere of light, and finally suspended in front of the 6-pointed star array. In less than 3 minutes, there were more than a dozen large and small light floating in front of the 6-pointed star array. After seeing no more of light floating, Ryan waved his wand. The wall coiled by the silver wire quickly deformed like slime and stretched out to cover the light just now, and finally turned into a square stone and fell to the ground. Okay. Ryan turned his head and said, "Now it's done. I think we can pass it. This stone is put here first, and I can use it to restore all of it when we return." Good job, Ryan. I have to admit that everyone has something they are good at. Even if I personally crack these magics, I'm not as fast as you. It seems right to bring you over. Dumbledore then nodded. Let's find it. I hope my guess is right. The 3 looked through the gap in the wall with their wands, and Ryan showed a shocked expression. Unlike Sirius's vaults, which are piled with only a variety of currencies, The Lestrange's vault truly embodies the oldest pureblood family's accumulated wealth for thousands of years. The room is filled from the ground to the ceiling gold coins and gold goblets, silver armor, fur of various exotic animals with spines or wings, magic potions in a bottle, and a skull still wearing a crown. Ryan's rough estimation found that the value of this wealth even exceeded the value of the wealth accumulated in the new treasury of the Valley Kingdom. Lane first walked to the gap and started to check the gap he made before. This gap was specially selected by him, just above a pile of gold and silverware. The reason why I chose here is because all the treasures in the opposite vault have been cast with a fire spell and a copy spell. If the vault door is opened below, it is inevitable to touch the treasures inside. My parents hid the really valuable things in the family before they died, and they couldn't believe the goblins. Sirius, who stepped forward at that time, looked at everything in front of him and said, "It's just that Clegg knows where those things are hidden, and now it refuses to tell me where the treasure is, only that when I have a child, I tell it when the child is 17 years old, and it will leave this wealth to the true heir of the Black family. But seriously, I don't believe how much precious they can leave." When I was young, our family had begun to decline. Otherwise, Narcissa would not marry Malfoy. Upstart, because according to tradition, the Black family will only marry the oldest pureblood families. From Sirius' words, it can be heard that compared with the ancient pureblood family, the so-called noble pureblood of the Malfoy family is very watery. As everyone knows, the Malfoy family is one of several court wizard families who came to this land with William the Conqueror. Therefore, they have had a long relationship with the Mole world in history, and even an ancestor tried to marry Queen Elizabeth. In this way, their family is naturally not worthy of being considered by those with a long history, but they think highly of themselves and look down on those small families. As a result, they seemed a little bit in the British magic world. If it weren't for their family business to have a lot of gold and also be willing to spend gold, it is estimated that few people are willing to make good friends with them. That's why Draco Malfoy had only Crabbe and Goyle, who were from a small family, willing to follow him. But even then their relationship was fragile. The two of Draco in the 7th part of the novel obviously, he didn't listen to him. I think I found that thing. While Ryan was thinking about these things, Dumbledore, who had just climbed on the scaffold and stood side by side with Sirius, raised his wand and said, looking in the direction of the magic wand light in his hand, Ryan saw a small binaural gold cup in the gap on the top of a shelf, a shield and a fairy-made helmet. It can be seen that this golden cup is very delicately made, and a raised, lively badger relief is cast on it. Lane saw that the shelves were all high-quality goods, at least much more precious than those randomly stacked on the floor below. According to Bella's character, the treasure placed on the top of the shelf must be the treasure that Voldemort gave him. www.mplnovel.com. Lane contained malicious thoughts. Even if Voldemort gave Bella a chicken leg that gnawed in half, Bella also it must be put on the top of the shelf after keeping fresh spell. Obviously, the flying mantra will definitely not work. Let me think about it. Dumbledore thought for a few seconds after carefully looking at where the gold cup was placed. It looks like this will do. Finally, he waved his wand out of the thin air and made a silver rope, and then directed the rope to grow longer and straight from the air to the gold cup at the top of the shelf. After the rope head flew to the edge of the gold cup, Dumbledore shook his wand. The rope wrapped around the gold cup like a living snake and began to shorten after knotting. Finally, he returned to Dumbledore's in hand. Great magic! Ryan's eyes widened when he saw this scene, because in the previous inspection he found that there were powerful magic interferences in these blocked vaults. In this case, it can be very remote to operate magic. It can reflect the level of magic. Ryan felt that although he could do it, it was definitely not as easy as Professor Dumbledore. If he was asked to take the gold cup, he would definitely choose to hook the thing directly with the hook on his forearm. I think I did not guess wrong. This is exactly what we need, Dumbledore said with a sigh of relief after holding the cup for a little inspection. Our goal here has been achieved. After he finished speaking, Dumbledore looked at the Lestrange's vault and shook his head regretfully. I'm really old, and sometimes even a little greedy. Chapter 532, Retreat. Greedy? Principal Dumbledore, I don't understand. As Sir Dumbledore put away the gold cup, he looked at the vault on the opposite side and muttered something. Sirius asked him when he heard some of his words. Originally thought Ryan wanted to step forward and ask about it, but he was preempted by Sirius. It seems that even after being in jail for more than 10 years, Sirius's aggressive and emotional character was still preserved when he was young. Of course, it may also be that the prison hasn't developed its mind after squatting for a long time. Ah, this is it. When asked by Sirius, Dumbledore immediately withdrew his gaze from the piles of treasures that were thrown into the vault next door. I can be sure that the Lestranges will use everything here for Voldemort's business, so I was thinking about whether I could destroy the wealth in this vault. Of course, this is just my dream. For security reasons, we should leave now. Anyway, our purpose of coming here has been achieved. It seems that Dumbledore is just a person who sticks to his principles, not as pedantic as people think. But think about it too. How can someone who put forward the slogan for greater benefits be a pedantic person when he was young? No, What you just thought was correct. Sirius reacted after hearing what Dumbledore said. In this case, why don't we take these things away? The Ling Pavilion has released a lot of magic on each treasure to ensure that they will not be taken away without being recognized. Although these magic may not be complicated for me, I have no way crack it off in a short time. Dumbledore shook his head. And ruining these things will make Ling find that it will probably attract Voldemort's attention in advance. This is indeed regrettable. Sirius looked downcast, and he was very sorry that such a good opportunity to fight Voldemort was wasted. I think I can at least destroy a part of it without being discovered. As Dumbledore led Ryan and Sirius to leave, Ryan said suddenly, while rapping from the waste space a black swarthy iron rod, one person tall and one in the middle, was pulled out. This is not much different from the iron rod and the steel reinforcement on a construction site, except that the two ends of the iron rod and the middle are hooped in red, yellow and green metal hoop. Originally I wanted to use this thing to forcibly destroy the vault gate, and now it just happens to be used in this place. Oh? Let me see. Dumbledore took the iron rod. Ryan had some regrets that he couldn't use the camera at this time. Otherwise, the image of Cosgandalf, the headmaster, would be absolutely great if it could be taken. It turns out this way. Dumbledore took the iron rod in his hand and checked it a bit to understand the usage. Ryan, your alchemy level did surprise me. I can feel that using this thing can destroy the present. Most of the magic items attached to magic items make those items become ordinary things. Yes, Ryan nodded in the eyes appreciated by the two elders, then said in a regretful tone. The only problem is that its use effect is proportional to the input magic. I can be sure that I can't make all the magic items in the vault lose their magic. I think you can leave this job to me. At this point, Dumbledore blinked at Ryan with a mischievous expression that was not consistent with his age. After all, everyone calls me the greatest white wizard in the world. I think my strength should be able to use this prop. After making a joke, Dumbledore turned around and waved the iron rod in his hand to the Lestrange family. As he waved, the head of the iron rod released a grey mist after another, and finally enveloped the entire vault. Ryan standing on the gap, they all stared at the fog. Suddenly, there was a very slight sound like the soap bubbles bursting in the mist. This blasting sound is like a starting gun. After that, there are more and more blasting sounds, which are more and more dense. In the end, even the vault can be heard as if the beer tank after shaking violently opened and those bubbles burst intensively. The same voice. 5 minutes later, the last explosion disappeared, as did the grey mist that had just flooded the entire vault. It was just that the green metal hoop at the top of the iron rod was also covered with cracks. Sirius looked out curiously, and found that the vault next door was the same as before. Everything was still in its original position, and every piece of gold and silver jewelry was gleaming. It feels the same as it was just now. Sirius said straight away that Ryan feels that emotional people like him are really not suitable for mixing with the deep blood of the city, or they will definitely offend a lot of people. Fortunately, Dumbledore is not a member of the gloomy traditional pureblood family. He is happy to explain the current situation to his former students. Yes, they do not seem to be much different from the previous ones. But this is also our purpose. The mist just now has actually penetrated into those things, and through these mists, the magic of all the magical things in the house connected together. Afterwards, by mixing those magical powers and pouring the mixed magical power into everything, destroy all the magical objects in the vault. So don't look at these things are the same as before. But this one, all the magic props and magic materials in the house have been turned into waste products. This is really Sirius scratched his head, but he smiled quickly. As heir to the Black family, although he has a lot of magic knowledge, the family heritage makes him master the knowledge of black magic, so even if Dumbledore has already made it clear, Sirius is still confused, but this does not prevent him from getting excited now. So, we are now destroying a vault of Voldemort and have not been discovered by the goblins of the Ling Pavilion? Sirius asked, grabbing an important point. Yes, we have achieved an unexpected victory, Ryan said with some heartache after receiving the iron rod from Professor Dumbledore. This iron rod was specially prepared for this dive into Ling Pavilion. Although the whole is dominated by Valyria steel, the interior is lined with tens of thousands of millet-sized three-dimensional runes and hundreds of soybean-sized gemstones with mithril as the core. If it is damaged accidentally, it will take at least half a month to recreate. Just now Dumbledore's magic output exceeded the design value, which caused problems with at least 1/3 of the runes in this alchemy product. Fortunately, Ryan borrowed the principle of the fuse in the circuit to destroy the rune to provide a buffer for the entire alchemy prop. So going back, he only needs to repair some simple runes. www.mplnovel.com doesn't have to be scrapped like traditional alchemy props. Okay, Ryan, you need to restore it first. We need to go out, otherwise the goblins of Cooling will come down to check it out. Dumbledore interrupted the conversation between Ryan and Sirius. No problem, Mr. Principal. Ryan finally glanced at the Lestrange family vault, which had become golden jade outside, withdrew his wand and began to restore the wall. Fortunately, after thoroughly understanding the defense here, Ryan moved much faster than before. In less than 2 minutes, the wall was restored. Everything became exactly the same as when they first came. After the last inspection, Dumbledore first changed the dragon's memory and awakened it, and then walked through the process again on the goblin. You finally came out. When the sober goblin found nothing wrong, he looked at Ryan and a little impatient expression appeared in their eyes. Of course, he did not dare to show it in front of Dumbledore. Seriously, the vault is not a good place to resolve differences. It seems that Dumbledore's memory of the goblin was that he and Sirius were bargaining in the vault. Ryan listened to the goblin carefully complaining that the light car was passing through the fire dragon and got into the car, and the original road returned to the ground. After walking out of the gate of Ling Pavilion, Lane felt that it was a way to complete the mission, whether it was to blow up a blood path with a large equivalent of nuclear bombs or to ride out of the ground on a giant dragon. Now quietly enter and exit quietly. Taking things away without leaving traces is the real king. Chapter 533, Subsequent Events. Once the items in the highest secret vault in Ling Pavilion are lost, it will often shock the entire British wizarding world and even the European wizarding world, such as the unsuccessful robbery of Voldemort and Shiloh in the first grade of Lane. But even if they did not succeed, all the newspapers and magazines in the wizarding world were covering this matter. Later, the fairies spent a lot of money in order to suppress this matter, and also spent a greater price to upgrade the security system. So on the second day after returning from Ling Pavilion, Ryan confirmed that when Dumbledore took him to Ling Pavilion to take out the gold cup, no one noticed. Because the front page of the Daily Prophet is the Ministry of Magic's latest security decree. It requires that every wizard who enters the Ministry of Magic, St. Mungo and the International Flying Road Departure Station must undergo a security check. After turning the newspaper over and reading it several times, Ryan was relieved, and he could be sure that there was no news about Ling Pavilion. What did you do with the principal yesterday? Hermione asked at this time while sitting next to Lane, eating a jam bread, while passing the phoenix mark on his forearm. Go to Ling Pavilion to get something. The principal thought that it might be one of the mysterious human Horcruxes. Ryan told Hermione straightforwardly, as a person qualified to know the existence of Voldemort Horcrux, told her that these things are the necessary. This is the first Horcrux we have destroyed. The mysterious man has a problem. Even through the soul link, Ryan heard Hermione's surprise. She recently recognized the importance of the integrity of the soul after studying the rules of death, so she did not dare to signal that Voldemort, who is farther away than everyone else on the road to immortality, would make such a low-level mistake. As far as I know, when the mysterious man was born, the Gunter family was completely defeated, so even if he is a descendant of Slytherin, he has not received much Slytherin's inheritance, except for the half he got from the secret room. Except for the dangerous body transformation technique of hair loss and nose. All his knowledge was acquired from Hogwarts, from the classroom and later during school. In this case, it is normal that the knowledge he acquired is flawed. Just like ordinary people who have some common sense in the magic world who are unclear. Hermione reacted immediately. Fortunately, we don't understand common sense at all, but it is a little flawed in the process of improving our strength. It's absolutely terrible. Fortunately, the knowledge we have acquired is systematic, and there will be no such problems. Why, how did my Hermes come? Ryan looked over his head at this time, and a big guy who was more than one circle larger than the other owls flew over, and then dropped a small note in front of Ryan. Whose letter is this? Ryan picked up the note and unfolded it. It turned out to be the principal's note again, asking when Ryan would be able to clean up the soul piece on this Horcrux, and asked if he could let him observe on the edge. A bit. It seems that Principal Dumbledore still has some doubts about himself, Ryan thought, but this is also normal. As the saying goes, old people, ghosts and spirits, Dumbledore, who can live more than 100 years old, will definitely be cautious on this important issue. Also cautious. Ryan would be upset if he didn't raise the matter at this time. In this case, Ryan also felt that he did not need to spend time on this matter. He directly took out the quill pen and a small piece of parchment from the school bag and wrote on it, "This afternoon." Then let Hermes send the letter to Professor Dumbledore. I think it looks thinner. Watching Hermes fly away, Hermione whispered, "No, it's just healthier after more exercise. You know it is a large owl that can fly on international routes. After eating and sleeping in the owl hut all day long, it will only grow fat and hurt its health. Look at it now. After sending letters to our parents twice in a month, we didn't look much better than before." You said the same. Hermione nodded and ate her breakfast. After finishing the class in the morning, Ryan received the principal's note, and agreed above that Ryan went to the principal's office to find him after class this afternoon. Then, at the end of the note, the password of today's office, chocolate sandwich. It's just that I can't wait. After all, the elimination of Voldemort is the principal's primary goal. The principal will be at the forefront of all things related to this, Ryan thought as he watched the note burn to ashes in his hands. After the afternoon class, Ryan appeared in Dumbledore's office on time. When the oak door opened, he saw the principal sitting on the high-backed chair as usual, his eyes fixed on the Hufflepuff gold cup on the table. "I'm sorry to call you over again today." Dumbledore raised his head and said in an apologetic tone when Ryan was found over, "Maybe you think I don't trust you so much, but please forgive me as an old man because this matter is so important. Mr. Principal, you don't need to explain, I can understand. Ryan said that as someone who has experienced war, he knows that this kind of thing that involves many lives can't be too careful. And as the greatest white wizard and headmaster of Hogwarts, it was very good to explain directly to his young students face to face. At least Ryan felt that this was already much higher than Dumbledore's proud pupil Harry, who didn't find out the truth until the principal died. I want to thank you for your understanding. Dumbledore laughed. Okay, where do you think it is more appropriate for us to deal with this gold cup? I hope there is no one, Lane said seriously. Because it's not easy to remove that soul solely by my ability, I will use some external force. But then the movement will be great. I see. Dumbledore nodded. If you are ready, let's go. It's really a good thing to have a phoenix as a pet. At least it's convenient to go out. After a burst of fire appeared on a cliff, Ryan looked at Dumbledore's Phoenix Fox with some envy. But he also knows that Dumbledore's ability to focus on Fox is purely because his family has a good heritage. The whole magic except this one does not have the second Phoenix as a private pet. What is this place? Ryan looked at his surroundings and asked www.mplnovel.com because he found that he was actually in an isolated island, surrounded by dark water. This is an island on the North Sea, Dumbledore explained. This island did not appear on the map of Muls. It used to be a transit point for ships that were transported to Azkaban, but it was abandoned after the Fellow Network became popular. I only happened by accident knowing the existence of this place. I can guarantee that no one else will bother you here. Then it's okay. Ryan moved, as usual, to build an altar and depict the runes. Then put enough supplies, such as a large pile of sunlight crystals, silver plates inlaid with gold runes. Another example is the obsidian carved with runes. In the process, Dumbledore remained quiet and stood by the side until Ryan signaled that his preparation was over. Alchemy is always so complicated, but every time you look at it, you can feel the extraordinary beauty. Dumbledore said, yes. Is there anything I need to do now? All you need is to give me the gold cup. Ryan said, I will use the alchemy circle to separate the soul from such magic props in a while, and then use Sky Thunder to completely destroy the soul. It sounds very good. Dumbledore nodded and took the gold cup out of a box and handed it to Ryan, while pulling out his old wand. Then I will pay attention to the surroundings for you here. You can operate with confidence. I promise that no one will come to disturb your magic ritual. Diff. Chapter 534, Soul Destruction. In the golden sunset, Ryan took the Hufflepuff's gold cup and stepped onto the stage. He can feel that the defense above this cup is not complicated, but he has a lot of hidden magic. If it were not for Ryan to know in advance that this gold cup was Voldemort's Horcrux, he might think it was an ancient and precious alchemy prop. This should also be a way to hide the Horcrux, otherwise Bellatrix would take Voldemort as and put the gift he gave to the most dazzling position. Ryan felt that it was difficult for him to find this slab of gold cups among the treasures of a warehouse. Everything that follows is like Ryan destroying the soul in the crown with the help of Mr. Luo Zhen when he was in the 4th grade, but this time, Ryan himself already has the ability to complete all this independently. At the same time, the altar that Ryan now uses is also the result of the integration of the content he has learned after acquiring a lot of knowledge before. Therefore, this time, it is not necessary, and the teacher Luo Zhen used the alchemy ray to get out the soul fragments and then summoned Daylight to destroy them. Now the altar combines the effects of alchemy and thunder, which can provide Voldemort's remnant soul from the expulsion of the Horcrux to the thunder and split the dragon surface. As the light on the altar flowed rapidly with the runes, the consumables that had been placed on it floated up and made a clicking sound, and finally turned into powder and burned a little golden flame. Under the direction of Lane Wand, a large number of golden flames began to interweave and merge on the altar, covering the golden cup in the center of the altar. When all the flames are integrated, the highest layer of the entire altar is completely filled with golden flames, and it looks like a jumping campfire in the distance. Under the blaze of the golden flame, a trace of unidentified black gas emerged from the golden cup. Dumbledore stared at the dark mist with wide eyes, and even pulled out his old wand from his arms. However, these black mists did not break through the magic defense on the altar, but were gradually forced out of the Horcrux by the golden light step by step. Finally, a black fog ball with a diameter of more than 1 meter was formed above the altar, and there were 2 blood-red eyes like snakes. As soon as the black shadow made his viper-like hiss, he was about to threaten something, and Ryan raised his wand in his hand and pointed to the sky. Thunder. Dumbledore, who was standing on the side, had been staring nervously at the Voldemort's soul. Suddenly a gust of wind blew past him, and he felt his surroundings darkened. Lifting his head, Dumbledore saw that the sky with only a few broken clouds was covered with black clouds. There is also a purple thunder in the dark clouds like a devil vine. Zongfeng explained, Taoism is popular. Anxious like a decree. At this time the last spell was read by Ryan, and a vortex formed in the middle of the dark clouds in the air. A purple thunderbolt with thick arms came straight to the altar, and under the watch of Dumbledore, it hit the fog of Voldemort's soul. With just a thunder, the mist was split by at least 1/3. A stern shout rang out in the souls of Ryan and Dumbledore, but the two had no lethality. Lion continued to keep his wand pointing at the sky, and after 3 seconds, the lightning that was thicker than the previous thunder hit the black mist formed by Voldemort's remnant. Even if the remnant souls consciously compressed their volume and released layers of grey-black fog to prepare for defense, the purple lightning still easily shattered all the defenses and hit the body of the remnant soul. In the sight of Dumbledore, the purple thunder that was thicker than the other and stronger than the other repeatedly hit the Voldemort remnant soul that was forced out of the Horcrux. After a dozen or so thunders passed, with the last scream, this remnant of Voldemort's soul was completely extinguished. After all the thunder and lightning were over, the dark clouds in the sky dispersed. The shining stars inlaid on the velvety black night sky revealed that the sun had already set in the process of destroying Voldemort's remnant. Ryan walked up to the altar and took off the golden cup. Even if the whole altar was blackened by thunder, but the golden cup was still not damaged under the protection of magic. He probably checked and confirmed that Voldemort's remnant soul completely disappeared from the cup, and went down to the altar to hold the golden cup with both hands and gave it to Principal Dumbledore. "It's done very well, even better than I thought. I thought I had to destroy the treasure left by the founder." After taking the golden cup and tapping it with an old wand, Dumbledore used a kind of approval said, "I must admit that even I can't be as perfect as I am now, but it's a pity that your alchemy teacher can't come out to help us." "Yes, he can't come out to help. After all, he is not in our world," Lane said in a low voice. Obviously Dumbledore misunderstood Teacher Liozen's state after confirming that Ryan was telling the truth, and he comforted. "Death is just another great adventure. You don't have to be sad about it." Ryan didn't know what to say, because he could not explain the truth to the headmaster. "I just stood there silently as a default of Dumbledore's statement." "Okay, we can go back. It's really uncomfortable to stay on this wet and cold island." After a burst of fire flashed, Phoenix Fox appeared again and they brought them back to the principal of Hogwarts in front of them. Office. After returning to the principal's office, Dumbledore put the Hufflepuff's gold cup in a cabinet and locked it, then returned to his seat and asked, "I think you did a great job removing the soul of Voldemort in the golden cup today, so can you tell me what do you think is the biggest difficulty in removing the soul piece from Harry's head?" Ryan thought for a moment at the table, then watched Dumbledore open his mouth, but said nothing. "You can say what you want to say. We are only doing academic discussions now, and we don't have to be affected by those other factors. I swear I won't tell anyone what you say here, or because of you what you say has any bad thoughts for you." Dumbledore saw Ryan's hesitation, and he gave a guarantee, because he knows that in the face of the top black magic props such as Horcrux, trying to solve the troubles it brings may involve some bad aspects. "I need to know how to make Horcruxes," Ryan said, leaning on the back of his chair. He didn't say that he had been worried that Dumbledore would consider himself an evil man similar to Voldemort, but after getting Dumbledore's assurance, he still said this key point. Although Dumbledore will sign an unequal treaty at the risk of human beings, he is indeed a man of words. "Through these 2 experiments of destroying Horcrux, I found that I was caught in a bottleneck. Since I don't know the specific situation of Horcrux, naturally I can't make a targeted preparation. At the time, I can also use magic to penetrate. After studying the alchemy props, squeeze out the soul of the mysterious man from the Horcrux. But if the Horcrux is a living creature, instilling magic will only kill them." Lane frankly stated the problems encountered now. "If I know how to make the Horcrux, I should be able to work out a set of targeted extermination schemes, so as not to hurt the Horcrux carrier." After listening to Dumbledore, he bowed his head slightly and thought for a long time, then asked in a tired tone, "Can you guarantee that you will not be attracted to this method, and will not go astray?" "Because I don't. I hope to make a new Dark Lord by myself." "Of course I can guarantee." Ryan nodded. "I can understand the principal's concerns, but I heard from Ron that the magic world has a magic contract called an unbreakable oath. This contract is absolutely impossible to be disobeyed. You can sign a contract with me to ensure that I will not make Horcrux." "I'm sorry, you should not bear this at your age," Dumbledore said word for word. "And it seems that I do not trust you very much, but I do need a guarantee. I'm very willing to use this method as a guarantee." Ryan bent over and gave a solemn salute. "To save innocent lives, many sacrifices are completely acceptable." Chapter 535, Horcrux History. Albus, how can you show Ryan such a dangerous black magic book? You have to know that he is not even an adult. Professor McGonagall's voice came from the principal's office. After confirming the unbreakable oath, Professor Dumbledore chose Professor McGonagall as a witness, but Professor McGonagall immediately expressed his dissatisfaction when he knew the content of the oath. "Moreover, this is related to many innocent lives." Dumbledore watched Professor McGonagall explain seriously. "I also know that this knowledge is very dangerous, but it is already the safest way to do so." "The safest course?" "Albus, I don't know when we need to put such a young child to the front," Professor McGonagall asked angrily after listening to Professor Dumbledore's explanation. "I also don't want to do this, but I think Ryan is no longer an ordinary child. He has enough will and strength to solve this problem, and now only he can solve the problems we face." "Yes, Mr. Principal is right." Lane also nodded beside him. "All this is voluntary. Please help me." Under the persuasion of Lane and Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall was finally willing to be this witness. After she nodded, Professor Dumbledore stood up from the chair, and then walked to the table to hold Ryan's right hand with her right hand. Professor McGonagall took the wand from his body and nodded the head of the wand on the two hands they held. "Ryan, would you never use the black magic of Horcrux?" Dumbledore asked. "I do," Ryan said. As he spoke, a thin, dazzling tongue of fire spewed out of Professor McGonagall's wand, like a red and hot metal wire, wrapped around the two hands they held. "Are you willing to do your best to keep these secrets and not let these evil knowledge spread from you?" "I do," Ryan said. The second tongue of fire spewed out of the wand and entwined with the first, forming a thin, red chain, like a rope, like a flaming snake. "So, the oath is established." Professor McGonagall announced that the flame chain that had previously wrapped around the hands of Principal Ryan and Dumbledore disappeared instantly, which means that the oath was established. "Okay, you can read this book now." When Professor McGonagall left the principal's office, Dumbledore pulled out a black book with a copper cover around the corner and spine of the cover from the locked drawer, passed it to Ryan, and then said, "For security reasons, you can only read this book in my office, not take it out." "Got it. I should finish reading this book soon," Ryan said, taking the book with both hands, only to find that the book was only a thin one, and the feel was definitely not the feel of parchment. "This is a human book?" After touching the cover of the book, Ryan recognized the material of the book because when the radiation world cleaned up the mutant predators, he had seen more than one human skin. "Yes," Dumbledore nodded. "This is the human skin made by the author after digging a dozen tombs, because in the past people thought that this kind of soul-related book was the best recorded on a human skin, and this book was released a few decades ago in the Hogwarts district, but after Voldemort made the Horcrux, I put away this book." "It doesn't sound too bad," Ryan shrugged, which was much better than radiating the world's mutants and peeling the skin alive. And Dumbledore's way of putting away this book also understood. "It's like for security reasons. There will be no detailed process flowcharts about some weapons or some bad medicine production in the General University Library." Therefore, Ryan felt that it was not necessary to be the same as the victim of delusion. He always felt that as long as the principal put away some books, he would suppress the younger generation. Those who really want to suppress the students are those pureblood families who read their books at home and prefer to rotten their books at home rather than take them out. After thinking about these chores, Ryan began to observe the book carefully. Only then did he discover that the cover of the original book had gold letters. But now it has all been eroded by time. "The Road to Eternal Life." Ryan spelled out the name of this Latin document through the lights in the principal's office. Although the title of the book had bragging elements, he also had to admit that the Horcrux was indeed a genius idea. It's just that this flaw of immortality is too great. After opening the book, Ryan discovered that it was a manuscript. The scribes used magic ink mixed with dragon blood and mandela grass juice to confirm that the book could be spread for a long time. In addition to the main content and some illustrations, the reader's experience in describing the blank space between the lines will let Ryan see the development history of Horcrux production. The Horcrux originated from the mummy of ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptian wizards used magic to cut off a part of the body and cultivated it into another body of their own, so that when they were damaged beyond recovery, the soul would be abandoned. The damaged body is resurrected with a spare body prepared in advance. This magic was later known to moles, but they did not know the specific situation. So there is a local habit of making mummies, and it is said that mummies can be resurrected. Later, with the spread of this magic, some wizards who wished to obtain immortality improved this magic. The improved magic does not require the spare body to be unshaped in advance, so that this thing can be hidden in a small magic box, and the concealment is greatly increased. At the same time, the biggest difference from the previous one is that a part of the body was also cut out by a complex magic means at the same time as a part of the body. In this way, the part protected by the special magic container and the effect of the passage of time on the soul will be suppressed to the minimum. Get a long life. At the same time, as long as the container is not found, the wizard cannot be killed. It's just that they will be irreversibly damaged every time they are resurrected, so the number of resurrection is also limited. And after the time has come to modern times, this magic has been improved again. The complex soul-cutting magic was replaced by killing www.mtlnovel.com. At the same time, it is no longer necessary to cut off a part of the body, just need to cut the soul. This is how the real Horcrux production method is produced. In this way, although the threshold for making Horcruxes has been greatly reduced and the production process has been simplified, it has also caused serious consequences. On the one hand, the magic that was originally only neutral is completely transformed into an evil black magic, so that the user's body will receive additional damage when faced with magic such as lightning or holy light. On the other hand, after the original body is destroyed, it cannot be directly resurrected like the previous two methods, but it needs to recreate a body through other means. But even this simplified version of Horcrux is actually far more than the knowledge of a normal wizard. Ryan understood the content based on the knowledge collected in multiple worlds. Voldemort was an orphan in the past, and he could understand these things simply by his 6 years of experience in the magical world while living in Hogwarts. It is really a genius. Not to mention anything else, just learning Latin to a high degree at this time is very powerful. Ryan felt that he would never be able to do this if he didn't take a gold finger. It took 5 hours for Ryan to put down the road to eternal life in his hand. Thanks to the previous power upgrade, he has improved his memory and understanding skills across a large step, which made him read this in a short time. The book. I think I've got a little clue. Looking at the Principal Dumbledore, who looked at him with concern, Ryan nodded. But I need time. This is already very good. Principal Dumbledore collected the book. Remember not to be impatient. We have enough time to wait. If the price of saving one innocent life is another innocent life, then such a rescue it is completely meaningless. Chapter 536, Strike, Little Puppets. Since reading the Horcrux manufacturing manual in Dumbledore's office that time, Dumbledore has never looked for Ryan again. This is also a good thing for Ryan, who can continue his production of Our Lady of Roses without any thought. In the midst of being busy, time went from February to March. The weather hasn't changed, but it's wet and windy. All public lounges posted a notice on the notice board saying that this trip to Hogsmeade was cancelled, and everyone was very dissatisfied. Even Hermione, who has been immersed in learning recently, found it difficult. Being deprived of time to take a break is a bit uncomfortable. But the most uncomfortable thing in the common room was Ron, who complained loudly, "It's my birthday. I've been looking forward to it." "Roro, don't worry, I will always be with you. You will have a great birthday." Lavender said to Ron that he didn't know where he suddenly got out. "Hey, one less." Like to invite everyone to collect, Zaishuan updates the fastest. Perhaps because Ryan and Hermione didn't go out of school recently. The Death Eaters became busy again after they found that the surrounding atmosphere had eased them. In the 2 days, the Daily Prophet reported on the new disappearance, including relatives of several Hogwarts students. In addition to the more tense wind outside, the recent Phantom Shift class has also not been smooth. Except for Ryan and Hermione, the changes in the others are at most a few people split up again. The students' frustration is increasing, and they have a lot of resistance to Waikiki Cross and his 3Ds. Ryan heard that many people have nicknamed Cross Cross. The most polite ones are Dog Stink and Dunghead. Naturally, this made everyone irritable and affected Ryan. "Brother, can I help you with any questions?" Rose Crystal asked before flying to Ryan. "That's it." Ryan told the puppet about the recent attacks outside the castle, and finally concluded, "Unfortunately, I have no way of doing things. I can only watch the murder of those innocent people, alas." "This is it." Rose Crystal nodded. "My elder brother does not have to worry about this. My sisters and I have just dealt with the world of the Song of Ice and Fire. It is estimated that there will be nothing for a long time. Teacher Luozen and Sister Alice are studying you. Last time I sent the gravel in the past. In this way, we just have time to help you recently. As a Rose girl, you and your teacher's orders are our only goal." After listening to the little puppets, Ryan found that there was a slight smell on the body of the little puppets. He hadn't noticed these smells because of the smell of alchemy potions in the room. "Japan, I can't read it, and I am short of it." 1 second to remember, Zaishuan. They did not kill anyone when they dealt with the problem, but this time it was different. With their authority in that world, they could make a smell. There were definitely a lot of killings before. "That's it," Rose Crystal said. "I like Lyanna Mormon very much, so when she asked me to send a letter to her sister yesterday, I went to Northland with everyone, thinking about going by the way the Great Wall of Despair. As a result, it was found that Lindong City had been turned into a ruin. After inquiring about the ruins, we went south to find Rob's army, hoping to find Daisy Mormon who was with him. After that, we just met Rob who was preparing for a wedding party in Twin River City, so we thought about having a good meal together and waiting for everyone to rest before we went to find Daisy Mormon. Then we saw the owner of that city, ready to chop robbers. Although I don't know who is right and who is wrong, on the one hand, I have a good relationship with Aliur. At the same time, as in that world, we will not allow someone to violate the agreement made in our name in front of us. So I just killed all the guys who tried to attack." "How much?" Ryan asked. "Not sure." Rose Crystal shook her head. "Anyway, the nobles who were in the hall and around the hall were all slaughtered, and then they went out and attacked the officers and nobles in the army of the city owner. Maybe because the sky was late, everyone didn't notice us. We stopped almost all the officers." Ryan can now confirm that the puppets broke into the scene of the wedding directly. Although Rob's idiot was the main reason for the tragedy in the original book, things have changed because of the killing of the puppets. At least now the main force of the Frey family and the Bolton family has been knocked out by them, and by the way, the Twin River City has fallen into the hands of the North. It seems that they still fought in the Civil War, but this is a good thing for Ryan. Once the North and West are in a long war, his country can just continue to make a fortune. Since you are willing to help, then I hope that you can go outside and stop the Death Eaters and evil creatures who carried out terrorist attacks and hurt innocent people." Lane looked at the puppets and said, "However, you must. The premise of protecting yourself is to leave as soon as possible if you are exposed. Also, for safety reasons, you'd better go out for only half a month this time, and return to Wanji grocery store after half a month. E-notification. Take it easy, My elder brother. After the little puppets whispered together for a while, Rose Crystal nodded and agreed. Please trust us, and with the help of Gil's skill, those bad guys find us more difficult than before now. Well, then I wish you all the best. Then Ryan secretly sneaked out of the school castle to release the puppets in the dark of the night, and then he could only pray that everything went well. The second day is the first day of March, which also happens to be a Saturday. Ryan got up early as usual, and after meeting with Hermione in the common room, the two began daily exercise. After they finished the exercise, they were going back to the dormitory to change clothes and go downstairs for breakfast. As a result, just after opening the door of the common room, I heard noise and noise. When the two of them got into the common room door and came to the common room www.mplnovel.com, they saw Harry and Ron ripping together on the carpeted stone floor. The only good news is that it is Saturday and this time is just a meal and the door of the dormitory is soundproof. Most people either have to go downstairs to eat or they still sleep in the bedroom, so no one was watching them wrestling on the floor at this time. Quickly imprisoned, Ryan and Hermione used the magic at the same time to control Harry. Then Hermione stepped forward and asked, "Why are you two fighting in the common room early in the morning?" "Because I love Romida Vanny." But he actually said that he also loves Romida. Harry and Ron deserved to be good friends, and they said the same in unison after hearing Ryan's question. It seems, what have I forgotten? Ryan always thought the scene before him was familiar, but couldn't figure out what was going on. But Hermione on the side saw the clue at this time. Ryan, they seem to have taken the obsessive. After checking the two people, Hermione came to a conclusion. After hearing Hermione's words, Ryan finally remembered what was going on, so they sat towards Harry just now. Looking on the coffee table in front of the sofa, I saw an open box on the coffee table, and only half a box of chocolate crucibles remained. Ryan walked over to pick up a chocolate crucible and read a detection spell at it. The pink light showed that Ryan guessed that there was no problem, and that the chocolate crucible was all mixed with an aphrodisiac. "You are right, but we may have to go to Professor Slughorn to disturb him." Ryan shrugged helplessly. "Aphrodisiac requires a special antidote. The broad-spectrum antidote that I carry is useless, and I don't have any raw materials to make the antidote. Chapter 537, Expired Medicine. The hallway was empty on Saturday morning, and all the students either ate in the restaurant or remedied in the dormitory. So Ryan and Hermione were alone, and they walked through the hallway with the guy who ate the obsessive agent, without attracting the attention of others. Hermione walked ahead with a weaker Harry on his shoulders, while Ryan carried a tall Ron on one shoulder and the other half of the box of chocolate between his armpits. Before going out, Ryan used magic to imprison Harry and the two of them completely, even closing their mouths, so as to avoid these two being ugly on the road. Fortunately, Ryan and Hermione have improved their strength many times before, and their physical strength is far better than their normal peers, so even if they carry two men, they can walk quickly. Originally, when you were going out, Ryan was going to lead them to Professor Slughorn, but because they couldn't move after being restrained by Harry, the walk became a drag, which was really unsatisfactory. So Hermione picked Harry up in one breath, and Ryan could only carry Ron forward to catch up with her. They chose to go to Professor Slughorn really not to change the plot, but because he is the only choice they have now. Hey, one less. Like to invite everyone to collect. Zaishuan updates the fastest. Ryan and the two of them did not meet other people along the way, and they came to the door of Slughorn's office smoothly. After putting Harry and them against the wall, Ryan stepped forward and knocked on the door. He was originally worried that the professor had gone downstairs for breakfast this time, but he knocked on the door and opened it. Professor Slughorn was wearing a green velvet dressing gown and a nightcap of the same color, still sleepy, and it seemed likely that he was sleeping. This is also in line with his character. "Professor, I'm really sorry to disturb you," Ryan said as quietly as possible, "but my friends Ryan and Harry mistakenly took the obsessive. Can you give him some antidote?" Hermione and I wanted to take him go to Mrs. Pomfrey, but you know that such things as obsessives should not appear in our hands, so, you know. It would be awkward to ask. Harry. Slughorn was excited when he heard Harry's name. He leaned out and looked at the two people who seemed to be standing there, beckoning. "Harry, and, Ronnie, hurry in." "Sorry, Professor," Hermione said at this time. "They just got together because of the obsessive agent. In order to prevent them from being ugly on the road, we can only use magic to bind them and put them over." "Oh, then you bring them in quickly." "Really, it's not easy for a girl like you to stand alone." Slughorn left the door open and said, standing. Hermione blushed as she walked into the office. "Japan, I can't read it, and I am short of it." "1 second to remember, Zaishuan." "I also think, but neither of us has enough raw materials." "When we get the raw materials to make the potion ready, it is estimated that something serious has been done. After all, we are in a bad situation when we see them both." Ryan explained, "If alchemy is used to save people, it's okay for me. If it is used by people like me who are not familiar with the body, it will hurt the body too much. I don't want to get them to school or hospital lay for a few days." "Ah, that's it." Slughorn nodded, and then looked at Harry with professional interest in his eyes. "You know, The longer the drug is released, the stronger the potency will be. Do you know where the medicine they take comes from? It should be mixed into chocolate. Ryan took the half box of chocolates. Looking at the packaging, may be one of the Christmas gifts Harry received. It is indeed expired, Slughorn said solemnly after picking up a piece of chocolate and smelling it. When he had finished speaking, he opened the dispensing bag and added some of this to a small crystal bottle. Harry and Ron lay half on the sofa, struggling with strange smirks on their faces. Fortunately, the magic they released was good. Harry and the two of them could not break free. Yes, the effect of the potion they drank seems to be enhanced. The obsession is also a rare potion. The more potent the potion, the stronger the potion. Professor Slughorn, who was dispensing, looked at Harry. Ryan explained that at this time he would be happy to share his own production experience with his proud students, so the amount of rat sage essential oil should be added when dispensing, so as to offset the stronger effect of the obsession agent. Fine. 3 minutes later, Slughorn took out a crystal bottle filled with transparent liquid, and then poured the liquid from the bottle into 2 crystal glasses. How do I let them drink this medicine now? Slughorn scratched his head a bit as he looked at the 2 men bound to the body with a cocoon bound by the curse. You can try to lift the curse on them first. It's not that trouble, Professor, Lane said, waving his wand. Harry opened their mouths actively, and Slughorn stepped forward and poured the potion into the mouth of the 2. The first time he drank the potion, Harry and Ron still had the confused smile on their faces, and then their smiles slowly disappeared into extreme fear. Reverted to normal? Hermione asked angrily after waving his wand to release the shackles. It was because these 2 geese Mater and Ryan failed to eat breakfast. Slughorn smiled. How behind? What happened to us just now? Asked Harry, who was paralyzed directly on the sofa after the shackles were lifted. I always feel like something went wrong with my brain just now. Aphrodisiac, Lane replied to Hermione. It's still powerful. Professor Slughorn took away their 2 cups. www.mplnovel.com added, Harry, you should learn to protect yourself as a celebrity. It feels terrible. Harry sat in horror on his face, trying to recall what had happened before. Ron beside him was also in deep contemplation like him. Fortunately, no one should have seen the scene you just embarrassed just now. Lane comforted. Hermione and I avoided all of you when we moved the 2 of you over again. No one should have found you 2 in the common room before, otherwise we wouldn't even have a bystander when we saw you. Hermione went on to analyze and had to say that her analysis was correct. How can nobody watch Harry and Ron wrestle on the floor in the character of Gryffindor students? That's really thank you too. Yes, thank you, Professor. Ron said sincerely. You're welcome, boy. You're welcome. Slughorn said. Harry and Ron sat on the sofa at the same time, and Ron whispered in his mouth. Fortunately, he was not seen by Lavender. You have to drink something refreshing now. I have butterbeer, wine, oak-aged mead here, Slughorn said, and walked to a table filled with drinks. Ha, mead is the best place to make up this sense of vacancy after the false feelings disappeared. Let's have a drink and celebrate Mr. Weasley's birthday. As Professor Slughorn took a bottle of exquisitely packed oak nectar from his desk, he looked at the bottle of brown red wine, raised his head slightly, frowned, and wondered about the memories, but very soon the whole expression stretched. Come on. Slughorn took out a large vial of crystal glasses and poured it into mead, then ordered everyone present, Happy birthday, Ralph. Chapter 538, Detoxification. Under the golden flame in the fireplace, Slughorn toasted and they toasted, but Ryan nervously used the ring to initiate alchemy to check the contents of the glass after the glass was handed, and did not even pay attention to the professor's toast. He can remember the original Slughorn took out a bottle of poisoned wine, but Ryan couldn't remember which kind of wine was selected in the original text of Slughorn, not to mention that he had seen several bottles of each kind of wine on the table that he just looked at, and naturally there was no way to determine which one. The bottle of wine is poisonous. Under such circumstances, he can't always tell the professor that you have a bottle of wine poisonous, right? That kind of explanation is simply unclear. For the same reason, Ryan can't check the wine for poison with great fanfare. You can only use the ring to initiate a little alchemy check after the wine glass is in hand. However, due to concerns that the plot change would lead to better poisons, for the sake of ensuring the safety of all of you here, when Ryan opened the bottle in front of them in Slughorn, he would not take any damage to the human body while he was not careful. The broad-spectrum antidote pill shot into the wine bottle. Finally, in the 5th second of getting the wine glass to start the alchemy, a black light flashed through the ring. He immediately shouted, "Don't drink, the wine is poisonous." But before his voice fell, he heard the sound of a cup falling to the ground. Hey, one less. Like to invite everyone to collect. Zaishuan updates the fastest. After being poisoned, his cup slipped from his hands, and then the whole person lay down on the ground along the back of the chair. The limbs were twitching violently, foaming in the mouth, eyes protruding, and his face darkened quickly. Ron! Harry yelled, crouching down to check Ron's condition. Ron was twitching at this time, having difficulty breathing. His skin started to turn blue, and at the same time a blood vessel turned purple. Obvious. Slughorn, the only adult in the room, seemed to be stunned and stammered, "How?" But, after pulling out his wand and checking for a few seconds, Ryan breathed a long sigh of relief. Before that, he threw an antidote into the wine bottle in advance as a precaution, but in order to ensure that it is harmless, so the effect is not particularly good. Fortunately, the medicine did work, weakening part of the effect of the poison in the wine bottle, so don't look at Ron's just looking terrible, but the internal organs are not seriously damaged. At least it should be lighter than the original injury, which also means that he has done a good deed. Lane said silently in his heart that if Ron died here today or suffered irreversible harm, he felt that he would be because of this guilt for a lifetime. Taking advantage of the chaos at this time, when everyone put all their attention on Ron, Ryan also quickly used the ring to launch another alchemy array to eliminate the trace of the antidote in the wine. "How are you, Ron?" Ryan gave up after watching Ron calm down. Harry immediately shouted at Ron's face. "Japan, I can't read it, and I am short of it." 1 second to remember, Zaishuan. In the morning, the school hospital was very quiet, pulling the curtains to let the sun shine through the curtains and gently spread on the patients. Only Ron's bed was full of people. Harry, Hermione and Ginny all sat beside him. They waited for more than an hour outside the door, trying to look inside whenever someone went in or out. Madame Pomfrey let them in at 9 o'clock. Fred and George arrived at 9:10. "Lane, I must thank him face to face to save our younger brother," Fred said, while placing a spree on Ron's bedside cabinet and sat down next to Ginny. Principal Dumbledore approached him, hoping to analyze something from him. Hermione shrugged a little helplessly, because he got a glass and reminded us that the wine was poisonous in seconds. But Ron drank too anxiously. "My brother is really..." Ginny was the first time to know what was going on at the time. She was helplessly touching her forehead with her hand. "Can't he slow down a little while he eats?" The Weasley family members present felt a little embarrassed after hearing Hermione's words, because they found that if Ron wasn't so greedy this time, they could have avoided the disaster. And while everyone in the school hospital gathered around Ron to discuss today's affairs, Ryan was inquired in the principal's office. "Lane, how did you find the wine poisonous?" Dumbledore asked in the chair of the principal's room and looked at the opposite lion seriously. "Because I have been studying these recently, Professor Dumbledore." Lane had prepared the answer long ago. "Since the last time Mr. Weasley was bitten by a venomous snake, I have been thinking about the rescue after poisoning. At first I just wanted to be an antidote, but then I found that the poisoned person was required to quickly distinguish the effect of the poison at the moment of the poisoning, and it's too difficult to come up with a corresponding antidote, and even the most widely used broad-spectrum antidote stones are amazingly low. So I wanted to develop a mass-produced one that was enough to fight most of the market." Antidote to poison. He said that he took out a bottle from the space bag and handed it to Dumbledore. The bottle was very small, not so much a bottle as a capsule, which contained a little colorless and transparent liquid. "In order to make an antidote, I naturally collected a large amount of poison as a control. When I was going to drink today, I smelled the smell of the poison in the bottle from the glass. I have to say that the poisoner is very smart and uses honey. The sweetness of the wine hides the bitterness of the poison. At the same time, the detector in Filch's hand can't detect the poison, which allows him to bring this dangerous thing into the school. Fortunately, I have been studying these poisons for a while, so smell the bitter bitterness from the rich sweetness of honey. It's really lucky." Dumbledore took the little bottle and tapped it with his wand, then said clearly, "But I hope you still have to keep these poisons in your hands, and don't let others touch them." "Relax, Professor Dumbledore." Ryan put away the poison. "I always carry the space bag with me to ensure that I am always under my management." "That's good." Dumbledore nodded and asked, "Can I ask about the progress of your antidote research? The Death Eaters are people with no moral bottom line. We may need antidote to face the endless poisoning of these Death Eaters. Compared to the goal, I did a part. After research, I made an antidote that can remove most of the poisons on the market." www.mplnovel.com. At the same time, this antidote also has a lot of strong moderating effect. Ryan was still a little dissatisfied with what he had studied in his free time in the past 2 years. "The medicine I gave Ron today is the result of my research. It is not as complicated as a similar medicine, but the cost of a bottle is more than 30 gallons, which is not cheaper than those on the market. It's already very good," Dumbledore said. "I would like to buy a bottle of 40 gallons from you. Give me 10 bottles first. You only need to give me 3 gallons of processing fees per bottle." Ryan smiled and declined the high price offered by the principal. "But you need to help me find the raw materials. There are a lot of raw materials in it that I can't get easily with my little hemp seed wizard." "No problem." Dumbledore nodded. "This is what I should do, although you are my student, but I really want to thank you on this. You really helped us a lot." Just after the two had finished their business, the fire in the fireplace flashed, and the Weasleys stepped out of the fireplace. "Principal, our son Ron," Mrs. Weasley asked Dumbledore as she rushed out of the fireplace. "He is in the school hospital right now, but it's no big deal." Dumbledore comforted. "And you have to thank Ryan. Thanks to him today, I can save your children as soon as possible." "Thank you so much, Ryan." After hearing Dumbledore's explanation of what happened today, Mrs. Weasley hugged Ryan sobbingly. "If you were not here today, I can't believe it." "It's all right, Mrs. Weasley. This is what I should do, Lane comforted. I believe that after seeing this, all those who can help can reach out to help. Chapter 539, Debate. Poison is in the wine? Fred asked softly in the hallway in front of the school hospital. Lane was out of the office with the Weasleys at this time. Now the Weasleys are accompanying Ron in front of the bed, while the others are together in the hallway at the entrance of the school hospital. Yes, Harry said immediately. He couldn't think of anything else now, and he was very happy to have the opportunity to discuss this topic again. Slughorn takes it from. Is it because he put something in Ron's glass while you are not paying attention? George asked. It's unlikely. Ryan shook his head. Because afterwards we checked all of our wine for poison. We can be sure that the poison was dropped into the bottle. The reason why Ron was poisoned was because he drank too fast. I didn't have time to stop him. It seems that the original target is very likely Slughorn, but who wants to kill an undisputed potion master? George shook his head, and after working for a year, he also knew clearly the true value of a potion master. I don't think Voldemort's side killed Slughorn simply because he went to Hogwarts to teach, not to mention Slughorn is a noble pureblood. Killing him does not meet the habits of Death Eaters. Dumbledore thinks that Voldemort wants to pass Slughorn, and in this case, what the Death Eaters will do is hard to say. Harry said, Slughorn had been hiding before coming to Hogwarts. It's been a year, and he thought of the memory Dumbledore hadn't gotten from Slughorn. Maybe Voldemort wanted to get rid of him, thinking he might be valuable to Dumbledore. Professor Slughorn just said that he intended to give this bottle of wine to the principal when he was at the school hospital, so the target of the poisoner may also be the principal Dumbledore. Ginny recalled. Then the poisoner doesn't know much about Slughorn. Hermione interjected. Everyone who knows Slughorn knows that he is likely to keep all the delicious things himself. At this time, heavy footsteps were heard in the corridor. Everyone looked up and saw Hagrid striding in, with rain in his hair, a bearskin coat flapping behind him, holding a crossbow in his hand, and stepping out of the dolphin on the ground generally large mud footprints. I have been teaching Grope in the Forbidden Forest to speak English after getting up, but as soon as I came back to prepare breakfast, I heard Professor Sprout tell me about Ron. How is he? It's okay, Harry said. They said he would be fine. After looking at Ron, who was accompanied by his parents through the glass window, Hagrid sat down and asked in a low voice, do you know why someone attacked Ron? I couldn't believe it when I heard the news. Not just Ron, Harry said beside Hagrid. If it weren't for Ryan to discover that the wine was poisonous in time, I guess 5 people were lying here instead of Ron. But we don't know what the attack was for except this one. We're still discussing this before you come here. The problem isn't anyone going to the Gryffindor students, Hagrid said worriedly. First Katie, now Ron and you. It should not be, because today we went to Professor Slughorn is a very accidental event. No one can predict in advance. Hermione said softly. But this poisoning should have something to do with the last curse necklace attack. Where does this come from? Fred asked. First, it was supposed to be fatal 2 times, but it was not fatal, even though it was pure luck. Second, the poison and the necklace seemed not to harm the people who were supposed to be harmed. Third, in these 2 attacks, Ryan was present and all them shot to save people. She said thoughtfully, it seems that the person behind the scenes is more insidious, because they don't seem to care how many people they kill to attack the real target. At the same time, at this point, Hermione stopped for a moment, then looked at everyone and said, at the same time, Ryan and I are also the most suspected people. After all, the chance of being on the scene twice and trying to save people is really too small. I believe you too, Harry said firmly, because the 2 of you really want to hurt others. You definitely don't need this stupid way of practice, let alone you and Ron have many chances to be alone. I really don't have to choose between these 2. The success rate is not high. Approach. Thank you for your trust, Lane said to Harry with a smile. But we still want. As Ryan said, half of the school hospital door was opened, and Madame Pomfrey called to them. Now there can be up to 4 more people to visit the patient. Who will come in? Ryan and Hermione got up and left together to allow Ron to stay with his family. More than 10 minutes after returning to the common room, Harry also came back. Ryan learned from his mouth that he knew from Hagrid that Dumbledore had a fight with Snape. The principal asked Snape the inspection of students at Slytherin College must be increased. Ryan believes that Dumbledore actually probably knew that he came to the school to kill him, and now the principal is actually warning Malfoy not to allow him to attack innocents like this. After all, as a principal, Dumbledore did not want any more students to be hurt for any reason. After experiencing the incident just now, Harry looked very tired, so he wanted to sit in the common room for a rest. But it didn't take long before Cormac McLaggen got in from the outside and started talking about the Quidditch game with Harry. Looking at the tired Harry and the chattering McLaggen, Ryan and Hermione quickly packed up and went to the library to read, and threw Harry staring at the 2 with pitiful eyes in the common room. The incident of Ron's poisoning spread quickly the next day, but everyone seemed to think that this might be an accident, because he was in the potion teacher's house at the time, and he took the medicine immediately, which was no big deal. What Lane heard from these rumors was Slughorn's medicine. It seems that Dumbledore wiped out Ryan's contribution for some reason, but Ryan felt that it was so good now, just enough to meet the requirements behind his invisibility. The next day Ryan went to the school hospital to visit Ron. Ron is much better now. He can even lie there on the pillow and kiss Lavender Brown, who took the initiative to take care of him. The two of them only appeared after seeing Ryan somewhat separated. Although Lavender is just an ordinary girl, it is definitely not the kind with IQ problems. Some nymphos in the original text are purely forced by insecurity. At that time, Ron only regarded her as a tool for demonstrating to Hermione. At that time, she just did everything possible to hope to get Ron, and she would naturally exaggerate in doing things. Now that Ron is truly in love with her, naturally she doesn't need to be so nervous anymore. www.mtlnovel.com. At least according to Ryan's observation, Lavender and Ron behaved normally together, absolutely not the original unexaggerated feeling of sticking together all day. Ryan learned by asking Lavender. Ron now drinks 20 milliliters of Routin every 4 hours and will be discharged after another 2 weeks, according to Mrs. Pomfrey. Although this time Ron was not seriously injured due to the rescue, but it is better to have a little detoxification to cure sequelae. But Ron is obviously not satisfied with the current treatment speed. Lane, Mrs. Pomfrey said that the antidote you gave me is master level, so do you have any medicine that will help me get better soon? I really can't accept to miss a week in the hospital. Quidditch game, Ron asked with a bitter face. You need to know that Routin is the most symptomatic medicine for you now. It is the best tonic product for the internal organs that you have been injured by poison. The medicine I made is good for first aid, but when it comes to this conditioning afterwards is really not as good as this most basic and traditional potion. If you didn't want to have sequelae, you can lie down in bed honestly for a few days. As for the Quidditch game, you don't have to worry. Harry has now found McLaggen as your substitute. I think he was not as good as you when he was in the trial of the day, but it should be barely usable. I couldn't rest assured because of McLaggen. Ron seemed a little excited, but fortunately, Lavender held his hand and he recovered. You and Hermione are the same. You don't know Quidditch at all. McLaggen and the rest of the team have no provenance. He might as well not be a goalkeeper. After more than 10 minutes of persuasion, Ron finally agreed to stay in the hospital until his body was completely in good health before he was discharged. But listening to him say, Ryan is also full of pessimism about the next Quidditch game. Chapter 540, Distracted. In recent days, Ron was being treated in the hospital, and both Harry and Ginny were busy training. Under such circumstances, Hermione seemed a bit lonely. After all, her girlfriend at the school was only Ginny. Now that Ginny is very busy for the game, Hermione almost never sees her. So when he went to the Forbidden Forest to treat the wolves next Saturday, Ryan brought Hermione to the Forbidden Forest to relax. Ah, it feels good to breathe in the fresh air, said Hermione, who was running briskly like a deer among the gravel of the ground in the Forbidden Forest. Now the atmosphere in the castle is more and more depressed, and it feels more and more like a prison. In this case, it feels really good to go around in a circle. That's right. Hermione, who ran ahead, stopped suddenly and asked, standing firmly on a mossy boulder and turning around. The previous 2 attacks always felt strange, and I always felt that there was a strange connection between them that I didn't expect. Ryan recalled that he couldn't figure out what the 2 attacks had in common except Malfoy, so he said, except that the attacker may be the same. I can't think of what the 2 attacks have in common. One time I used a necklace rich in black magic curse, and the other time I put on a poisonous wine. Hey, there is one less. If you like it, please collect it. The update speed is the fastest. That bottle of wine? Ryan thought for a moment and found that he really didn't know where the bottle was made. But it's not too difficult to think about where the wine is produced. After all, the wizarding world is so big, and there are not many places where wine can be produced. In this case, it is also a good direction to investigate the origin of wine. I don't know very well, but I can ask Slughorn when I go back. As a person who is good at enjoying, if he can be called a good wine, he must know where the bottle of wine came from. Soon they arrived near the village of Myriad, and it was Mr. Wolf who came out to meet them. After chatting for a while, Ryan found Wolf vomiting and seemed to be embarrassed, so he crouched down and asked, "What are your difficulties? Can you tell me? Maybe I can help you." "Of course it's okay. It's always a good thing to know some of your countrymen. I think Lupin will definitely welcome you." "But did you tell Aunt Betty about this?" Ryan asked. "Of course I said it beforehand." Wolf nodded. "And this time I just went there and played there for half a month to meet my fellow citizens, and I will come back later." "I thought you were going to move in," Ryan said. "After all, you are a werewolf, and it is normal to live with your countrymen." "I have also thought about this," Wolf said. "After I discovered so many kind fellows, I also wanted to move in. However, after careful consideration, I discovered that the Forbidden Forest is my home, so this time I should visit relatives and make a few friends. You know, the horse people are too silent. I usually find it difficult to find someone to chat with except Aunt Betty." "Remember for a second. Now there are a total of 39 werewolves in the base, which has basically reached the limit. The rest are some werewolves who are happy with killing, theft and robbery," Lupin said when Ryan finished his treatment break. This time it was still 2 werewolves. Ryan told them that his level had improved since Christmas. Now he can treat 2 werewolves at a time. "Now you have to be prepared. I'm worried that the mysterious people will come to attack you. After all, You are now estimated to be the largest werewolf settlement in Europe, Ryan told him seriously. We are ready. Lupin nodded solemnly. The 3 formerers began to train each of us. Everyone learned very seriously. It can even be said that we study seriously at any time, because now, you have given us a home, a goal that you are willing to fight for. I have this ability, so I will do it naturally. You don't have to thank me so much. I believe that other people are capable and willing to help you. I'm not as great as you said, Ryan said, but Lupin broke his modesty. But for so many years, you are the only one who really did something for the werewolf. This is very important to us, because your kindness let us know that in addition to our relatives and friends, there are indeed people who care about the werewolf, and willing to put a lot of energy into this. It's really bad reputation. Ryan was even embarrassed by the praise, so he quickly changed the subject. Yes, there is a special werewolf in the Horseman's village. He hopes to visit you. Special werewolf? Lupin asked, somewhat puzzled. Probably because there were too few werewolves in this form of wolf, and even Lupin hadn't heard of this before contacting a large number of werewolves. That's it, Lane whispered. After hearing this, Lupin was very surprised, because most of the werewolves gathered at him were acquired werewolves, and occasionally there were individual-born werewolves. But I have never heard of a special werewolf like Wolf. Relax, we will take care of this fellow. Lupin nodded and agreed, whether or not he can become a person. He is our fellow. Then thank you, Lane said with a smile, and then let his grab guardian spirit pass the news to Wolf, and soon Wolf and Hermione received the news and ran over, on Wolf's back also carrying a blue cloth pocket. Can I go on a trip? Wolf shouted excitedly. Ryan also recognized the pocket on Wolf's back as a spare pocket for Hermione. He likes to study more than most of the students in our college. You reading www.uukanzu.com. Hermione really appreciates Wolf and even compares him with others. If Harry and Ron learn so, they will definitely get an low score in the last exam. It seems that in Hermione's impression now, Harry's 2 biggest labels are learning scum, but seriously, it depends on who you compare with. If you can take RS professional courses, you can prove that Harry and Luon's academic level is not bad, but it is indeed a bit worse than the downright scholars like Ryan and Hermione. In this case, Hermione can think that Wolf is stronger than the 2, which shows how hard Wolf is in learning. Ryan felt that Wolf might become a wise man among werewolves in the future. After watching Lupin and his companions come to take Wolf away, Lane and Hermione also quietly returned to the school. In addition to studying existing topics, they tried to understand whether wine that was drunk in Slughorn was produced that day. This question is not complicated. After the potion class ended the next day, Ryan asked Professor Slughorn directly, "Did you say that day's wine?" Slughorn's expression became serious after hearing Ryan's question. "That bottle must be a mead ripened by Mrs. Rosiematter's top oak barrel. I have been drinking the wine for 20 years. Even if I smell it, I can be sure that the bottle is from the 3 Broom Bars, and it is also the best product brewed by Mrs. Rosiemattor. The wine of unknown origin is mixed into my collection, and if the mead is produced elsewhere, I will definitely not be confused with my original wine." "Thank you, Professor. I think I probably know where the problem is." Ryan left after bowing. Chapter 541, Track. "What did you call me to do in such a hurry?" Hermione was curious. She went to the library just after class, and was pulled out by the mysterious face of Ryan before she wrote a word, and then came to a woo people in the hallway. "I found a suspicion in the 2 previous attacks," Lane said, and Hermione immediately became energized when she heard the sentence. "You found a suspicious point? This is great. Can you tell me what you found?" 3 Broom Taverns. Ryan didn't sell it. Katie was attacked in the toilet of the 3 Broom Taverns, and the bottle of mead also came from the 3 Broom Taverns. "You mean someone is doing hands and feet in the 3 Broom Taverns?" This really can greatly reduce the scope of the investigation. Hermione thought for a moment. Although the people in the 3 Brooms are very mixed, it's at least more convenient to find that person than aimlessly lurking now. "Hey, there's a little less. If you like it, please collect it. The update speed is the fastest." As a result, the scope of the suspicion was narrowed to the staff of the bar, the people who brought the wine into Hogwarts, and the regular customers of the 3 Broom Bars that were rarely able to enter the wine cellar. Hermione reacted at once. "We are the same as the 4th grade, and the staff in the bar are impersonated, or it may be a soul-spelling curse, and it may even have to be done because a loved one was kidnapped." Ryan added, "I think even if we find the person who is behind the scenes to launch the attack, we may not be able to catch the real murderer." The wizards suspect that there are too many ways to control a person. The fact is that, as he said, after Ryan sent a thick analysis letter to the principal with an owl, the next day there was news that Mrs. Rosmeter had to go to San Mungo for a sudden illness. This means that the 3 Broom Bars may need to be closed for a while, which sounds terrible. At lunch, Simo expressed his opinion on the dining table. "But this has nothing to do with us," Dean said frustratedly. "Because I heard people say that before the situation could not be stabilized, our Hogsmeade Day was cancelled indefinitely." Our aside came from Gryffindor's long table. because for them the bad news one after another recently. Whether the Gryffindor Quidditch team encountered 2 consecutive attacks or Hogsmeade days indefinite suspension, all of this is very bad for everyone. Japan, I can't read it, and I am short of it. Remember for a second. Harry and Ginny were supposed to come to pick you up, but you know they are about to play. So the 2 of us persuaded them to the court. Will you blame us for this? Ryan explained. Of course I can understand that this game is very important, especially now McLagan, who always teaches others, feels that he can be better than the rest of us in any position. I can't imagine this kind of cooperation with other teammates. How can the people together play this game well? Ron said, more and more excited, and soon a red cloud floated on his cheek. Upon seeing this, Lavender immediately squeezed his hand and interrupted his long speech. Although Mrs. Pomfrey thinks you have recovered, she thinks you can't be too excited during this time. Even she specifically told me that you should never watch this game. Ryan, do you have any way for me to watch this game? Ron looked at Ryan pitifully, but Ryan was unimpressed. What you need now is rest. If you don't want to leave any sequelae, I suggest you still listen to Madame Pomfrey's words honestly. The 4 of them walked through the unmanned corridor. The whole school was out, either sitting in the stadium or going there. So the corridor seemed empty, and suddenly a footstep came from the corner in front. Ryan looked cautiously in the corner where the voice came from. It turned out that Malfoy was walking towards them, and there were 2 lower-grade Slytherin girls beside him, one of whom was sullen. After seeing Ryan and their group, Malfoy stopped suddenly, but he didn't use bloodlines and other reasons to provoke them as usual, but just continued to move forward with a short laugh. Where are you going? Ron asked loudly. Ah, the child of the pure-blood traitor. Malfoy sneered. I don't think there is anything to report to you. Should you just come out of the school hospital like this? Don't let yourself be involved in too much business. Send it in again. A girl laughed reluctantly, but everyone else's face was tight. Ron looked very angry, as if to punch Malfoy, but Lavender stopped him. Ron may no longer struggle because of Lavender. Malfoy walked past them with their heads raised like a victorious general, and the 2 girls tried to keep up with his footsteps and turned around and disappeared. After confirming that both of Malfoy had disappeared, Ron suddenly turned his head and whispered to Ryan, "Isn't Harry telling us what Malfoy is doing sneaky? Now it seems to be the case. Otherwise, he would not be here." When the whole school went out to watch the ball, they took 2 people around in the castle. So can you 2 follow them to see what Malfoy is doing? Of course. Ryan nodded. But you have to make sure you don't go to the court. I don't want to hear that you have been sent to the school hospital again. www.mplnovel.com. I promise in my mother's name. I immediately went back to the common room to rest, and I would never take a step out of the castle during this game time. Ron raised a hand and solemnly swore, and then he lowered his hand and said, "Come on with him, otherwise I lost it." You can rest assured, I will look at Ronald. Lavender also promised, so Ryan and Hermione nodded to them, and then chased towards the corner where Malfoy had just disappeared. Malfoy was indeed cautious. Even if nobody was in the castle at this time, he had made many circles, and finally disappeared in an empty corridor, which caused Ryan and Hermione to lose their targets. "What's the matter?" Hermione asked Ryan after asking for some portraits on the wall. "I guess they have some magic props that can be hidden." They came to this corridor to completely get rid of the surveillance in the school. "It seems that Malfoy is really planning something that is not good for Hogwarts," Lane said, turning his head. "So what should we do now?" Hermione asked. She thought that nobody in the castle was a good opportunity to stop Malfoy, but she didn't expect that Malfoy could run by other means. "I can only wait for the next chance." Ryan shrugged his shoulders. Anyway, when he went to the request room to check the disappearing cabinet, he found that Malfoy was indeed repairing this thing, but there was still a long time before it was repaired. They had enough time to go. Investigation. Not to mention that Ryan's hands, feet, and traps on the disappearing cabinet were not triggered, which means that even if the Malfoy machine repairs the disappearing cabinet, it will not cause much damage to the school. This is why Ryan does not report directly. He hopes that the disappearing cabinet will give a surprise to those intruders. Chapter 542, Countermeasure. After making sure that he couldn't keep up with Malfoy this time, Ryan took the opportunity to choose to return. He stopped Hermione's plan to search layer by layer for possible thrills, but returned to Gryffindor's common room with her. "We can ask about the portrait, and Malfoy can. We're in trouble if he is found to be following him," Ryan explained on the way back to the common room. He was a little worried that Malfoy might change his plan in the event of a shock. "Then all your previous preparations will be invalid." "Yes, Malfoy is such a conspirator," Ron, leaning on the couch, said excitedly after listening to Ryan's briefing on the situation he just followed. Lavender, who was sitting on the sofa in the distance to make room for them to talk, was alarmed by Ron's big movements. She raised her head and looked over. Ron quickly waved her hand to signal that she was okay, then lowered her head and whispered to Ryan, "Say, now that he does this just means that he has a ghost in his heart. We should really understand what he wants to do." However, after more than 10 minutes of discussion, They found that unless they can keep a long track, otherwise, it is impossible to accurately grasp the evidence of Malfoy's conspiracy. However, it is too difficult to manipulate Malfoy for continuous surveillance. At least as a Gryffindor student, it is difficult for them to do this. Hey, one less. If you like it, please collect it. The update speed is the fastest. Of course, defeat is not an adjective here. Neville told Ryan that Gryffindor lost terribly this time. Did you pick Ron out of the hospital so you didn't go to the stadium to watch the ball? I would say that you didn't go to watch. That's right. Our team was a mess this time and the game was a mess. How many points did you lose? Ryan asked. Although I am not very interested in the Quidditch game. But if I remember correctly, McLaggen is the goalkeeper. Why would he have a stick and still hurt Harry? Hermione's tone revealed incredible. You're talking about ideas, and that's the root cause of our failure today. Neville, who was always good-tempered, suddenly seemed annoyed at this moment. McLaggen liked to criticize other players before training, and also pointed out the detailed training plan. It was like he was the captain, but we never thought that he was the same on the game scene. First accused Ginny of losing Ghost flying the ball, then quarreling with Harry, and finally Perks grabbed the stick to demonstrate how to play the ball to the flying Cadvarad. But his level is obviously not as powerful as he thought. As a result, after hitting the roaming ball, Harry was knocked down at once, and then we broke 1,000 miles. If I would give him a few curses to let him taste it, Ron said loudly. Relax, someone has already packed him for you. Neville shrugged. When I came back, I heard that Ginny said that the guys on the Quidditch team had left McLaggen in the locker room and said they wanted to talk to him. Remember for a second. The skull shattered. The word Hermione just took out from Neville's mouth and took a sharp breath. Relax, Madame Pomfrey is at the scene. She took Harry's skull back in an instant. Neville quickly explained when she saw Hermione's horrified expression. Hermione only thought that this is the world of wizards. Skull fracture is not that dangerous. In the afternoon, Ryan and Ron went to visit Harry together. Harry was awake at this time, but he was still lying in bed. A large band of hard bandages wrapped around his head, like an Arab turban. There were 2 cups of freshly drinked tea at the head of the bed. Ginny sent me lunch just now, and then I didn't leave until you got in 7 or 8 minutes before you came in. Harry explained after discovering the pair of confiscated teacups. Probably because Ginny told him the misfortune of the game before, Harry now looks very stable. But when he heard Ron tell him to leave the hospital, he saw Malfoy seemingly taking advantage of the fact that everyone was not in the castle, trying to sneak around in the castle. His emotions suddenly became excited. I said where he went to conspire, Harry whispered after looking at Madame Pomfrey's office. I used to monitor the live map before and found that he disappeared from the map. Think about what he said when he started school. It must be hiding somewhere to do something incomprehensible. The problem now is that we can't stare at him. Ryan spread his hand. I lost it with Hermione this morning, so I guess they must have an invisibility cloak, and there may be more than one. This is really troublesome, Harry said to himself. Everyone we know has a full class and it is impossible to monitor Malfoy in real time. Not to mention that as a student of Slytherin, as long as he walks over to the Slytherin dorm in the basement, we can't get on with them. I wish I was the Minister of Magic, so that I could call a bunch of Aurors to stare at Malfoy for 24 hours. Otherwise, the principal of Hogwarts will do, and everything in the school is under my control. I can call armor, portraits, and house elves staring at the guy continuously. Wait, you repeat what you just said. Harry seemed to be inspired by Ron. I said I wish I was Minister of Magic. Ron was interrupted by Harry at the beginning. What was the last sentence you just said? I said if I were the principal, I could call armor, portraits, and house elves staring at the guy without interruption. Ron looked at Harry after he finished, not knowing what he was thinking. That's the sentence. Harry nodded. Although I am not the principal, I have a house elf friend who can ask him to help. You mean Dobby? Ron reacted at once. Yes, I think only my friend is free to monitor Malfoy around the clock, and can freely enter Slytherin College. Harry whispered. Dobby, with a snapping sound, a house elf wearing a shrunken chestnut pullover, a top stocking cap, and socks of different colors on his feet appeared in front of everyone. Oh, Harry Potter, Dobby just heard your call, so he came over the first time. Dobby, have you been busy with your work lately? Harry asked a little embarrassedly, because after calling Dobby, he remembered that the elves were busy all the time. His own work www.mtlnovel.com compared to the previous host, Hogwarts work is really easy. Dobby shook his head happily, and his 2 big ears even patted his face. So if the great Harry Potter is busy and needs Dobby's help, Dobby is happy to serve him. It's an honor to be able to serve Harry Potter. Well, if that's the case, then I hope you follow Draco Malfoy, Harry said after thinking for a moment. He ignored Ryan and Ron's surprised expressions. I want to know where he went, who he met and what he did. I want you to stare at him all day long. Yes, Harry Potter, Dobby said immediately, his big round eyes shining with excitement. If Dobby did something wrong, Dobby jumped from the top floor. Harry Potter. That's not necessary, Harry said busy. By the way, I want you to report to me every 3 days, but be sure to come back when no one around me. Ryan, Ron, Ginny and Hermione are okay. Don't tell anyone else what you are doing. Just like Jank plaster sticks to Malfoy. Please wait. As Dobby finished accepting the task and was about to leave, Ryan stopped him. And then took out a small wallet from the space bag, and took out a black hexagon like a coin from the inside. The metal piece is also inlaid with a golden eye pattern. There are 30 such metal pieces in this bag. You only need to input a bit of magic to work it for a whole day. When you use it, point your eyes at the place where you want to shoot and press the metal piece. You don't have to wait the silly when Fu stops. Thank you so much. Dobby bowed after receiving the small leather bag. It's better than this to complete the Great Harry Potter mission. Chapter 543. Prepare for battle. Harry was discharged from the hospital the next day, but this time he did not think Madame Pomfrey's treatment was a good thing, because now he faced more than just a pile of homework that he hadn't done. When he was in the corridor, he also met Luna and gave him a note with Dumbledore's invitation to go to class. God, I haven't done the homework Dumbledore gave me last time. I'm going to finish this time. Harry scratched his hair annoyedly, and even messed up the hair that was like a chicken nest. At this time they happened to be walking through a corridor on the 8th floor. A very young girl was watching a tapestry of a giant monster wearing a ballet skirt. Seeing Harry's exaggerated behavior, she seemed very scared and dropped a heavy copper balance in her hand to the ground. It's okay, Hermione said softly, and quickly walked over to help her. Come on, she said, knocking on the broken balance with her wand, restoring as before. But the little girl seemed to be stunned, standing on the spot like a wood without saying a word. Am I so scary? Hermione turned to ask Ryan. No, you are lovely today. Ryan helped Hermione put a strand of hair that fell in front of her eyes behind her ears, and then stared at her seriously. Seeing this scene, Harry and Ron picked up Gordian, which Luna had just given, and smiled. Naturally, they also retaliated a little. When the whole day of class ended and wrote homework, Harry asked for a long time before Ryan agreed to take a look at his and Ron's herbal homework. When the clock went to 8 o'clock, Harry was uneasy to go to Dumbledore's office for class. Others started to do their homework. Writing. Hermione suddenly raised her head and asked Ryan. Ryan, have you been upset recently? Can you tell me something? It's all seen by you. Ryan put down his quill and looked around, and found the people in the common room and not much. Ron, who was closest to them, was doing homework with Sister Ginny, and did not pay attention to it. So he approached Hermione and said, I'm worried about Rose Crystal. They must know that this is their first time in our world, even if she has all our memories of this world, but there has been no news of them recently, so I am very worried about them. What did you ask them to do? Hermione asked. So Ryan whispered the whole process from the time she was worried about being owned by Rose Crystal to the fact that the puppets asked to protect the innocent outside. Relax. Hermione comforted pat on Ryan's shoulder after listening. I believe they will be fine. I have seen their level, and I feel that Death Eaters can't block all of them, even if the mysterious people are shot. Now no news is the best news. I believe soon they will triumph. I hope so. Ryan prayed silently in his heart, hoping that they would return on time safely. In the past 2 days. Just as Ryan was worried about these little puppets, a few hundred kilometers north of the school, a large island of Dementors flew around on an island that did not appear on any map. There is even a black earth mountain piled high in the center, with a large number of holes densely covered with honeycombs. From time to time, Dementors fly in and out from inside. Because of these Dementors, the entire island is frozen at extremely low temperatures as if it were frozen. Some of the wild grass that had originally grown on the island was withered and covered with thick frost. The seawater near the island was frozen there, forming large and small icicles. Naturally, in this case, this place is completely unsuitable for human survival, so even these Dementors have fallen to Voldemort. But Voldemort did not send Death Eaters to monitor like giants. Even Voldemort didn't even plan to send someone to monitor the Dementors. He just sent some unlucky eggs to notify these Dementors when something happened. But in such a restricted area of life, there was a silver-haired little figure flying with his black wings on his back. It's just that even if she flies in front of the Dementors flying, the Dementors will ignore her. She rubbed her frosted dry grass with her feet, and then walked around a frosted mound to the seashore. She landed in front of a reef and reached out with a small hand to knock at a certain rhythm. Soon a round stone sunk inwards, revealing a circle of golden light. When the exposed gap was large enough, the silver-haired doll quickly squeezed in. Afterwards, the stone protruded back again and was tightly blocked in its original position, and the reef turned back into a unified whole again. Ordinary people, even lying on it, can't see that there's a universe in this reef. The reef has been hollowed out, and a long table has been placed in it. 2 lantern plants are placed on the table to light the entire reef. In addition, a variety of snacks and drinks are also displayed on a long table. Before, the puppets should have supper and turned their heads towards the door when they saw someone enter the door. It's hard. Big Sister's head. A little doll with blonde hair in a red dress came out, still holding a cup of tea in his hand. Have a cup of hot tea to warm yourself up. This ghost place is too cold. Thanks, it's really red. The silver-haired mercury lamp took the glass and took a sip. Also, don't call my elder sister in the future. This kind of name is not imposing at all. Remember to call my elder sister next time. Okay, Elder sister. No problem, elder sister. The rest of the little puppets sitting at the table eating supper replied in unison. Seeing the mercury lamp, he shook his head helplessly, and then turned to look at the canary sitting elegantly with a cup of coffee. The situation outside today is not much different from yesterday. The number of Dementors entering the island is about the same as that of leaving the island, but they are only single digits. It seems that these monsters have entered the peak of the breeding period in the past 2 days. More monsters are coming. Now that's the case, let's do it tonight. Canary took a sip of coffee and put the cup on the saucer. If you drag it on, I'm worried about other things happening. www.mplnovel.com, and it's a little too long for us to come out, and then drag on Brother Ryan to come out and find us. Well, Rose Crystal, your previous arrangement, how about it? It's okay. Rose Crystal raised her hand to signal. I and my sisters have placed the positions that my brother gave me to various places on the island to ensure that there are no missing areas. Yes, we have traveled to every corner of the island these days. Thanks to these monsters who don't have eyes, they just rely on their souls to determine the life around them, so we can arrange so many under their eyes. Position. Squeaking. She nodded desperately, and then held his cheek with both hands. After going back this time, we must let Ryan invite us to a big meal. I feel that these 2 weeks have made me tired and thin. Okay, my sister, we will not be hungry or thin, Kang Sing said with a slate face, and Brother Ryan is a good person. We only have to say that we want to eat a big meal. He will definitely entertain us with the best food of. So what is the specific time for our action? What time is it tonight? This place is so annoying, wet and cold. I want to leave here quickly, and I don't want to stay longer in this place for a second. Starstone and Jade Starstone. The young berry withdrew his eyes and took a bite of the strawberry daifuku, then looked at the canary commander of the operation and said, well, let me see. Canary said, pulling a pocket watch with a watch into it, and looked at it. Well, let's relax now, and by 8 o'clock we will be dispatched collectively to wipe out these evil things. After talking, the canary put away the pocket watch and raised the cup. Wish all the best. It will go well. The other puppets also raised their glasses and said in unison. Chapter 544. Dementor Island. The reason why these little puppets are now on the island of Dementors is entirely because of the task they received from Ryan half a month ago. Ryan just vaguely said at the time that they hoped to minimize the harm suffered by innocent people, so the puppets seemed a little confused after leaving the castle. Fortunately, Rose Crystal is connected to Ryan's soul, and he has gained a lot of knowledge from Ryan. So at her suggestion, a group of puppets got on the plane and went straight to London. Maybe it was because of the attacks on Ryan that scared the Death Eaters before, or maybe the Death Eaters have been busy recently. The puppets spent 3 days strolling in London and did not catch a devastating Death Eater. Even if they heard someone being attacked, they found nothing when they arrived at the scene. This made them a little frustrated, and the puppets didn't want to go back to their hands empty-handed. Fortunately, this time the canary as a think tank stood up. She pointed out that anyway, the goal now is to clean up those who hurt innocent people, then this time it is better to try to kill those Dementors than to be silly here. At least Dementors are everywhere, and even if this evil creature is completely eliminated there will not be any moral burden. At this time, the little puppets suddenly realized that Dementors are indeed a blank area of their thinking, because they are not affected by Dementors at all, and naturally they did not expect Dementors to be a target creature. After spending a day easily killing several Dementors with magic mixed with faith, Rose Crystal felt a little dissatisfied. She thinks that even in the first half of this month, at most dozens of Dementors will be killed. But there will be at least a few hundred Dementors. Such a small loss is not noticeable. I couldn't achieve the kind of lesson that the elder brother had hoped to give the group of black wizards a lesson. Let them converge for the purpose of minimizing harm to innocent atrocities. A few days after coming out, the puppets had figured out why Ryan had assigned them such a task. Although they as puppets are not very consistent with humans in terms of the 3 views, but they are indeed born of the inner love of Ryan and Liu Zen, so they naturally resent the group led by Voldemort just like Ryan. Destructive guys, not to mention the evil creatures such as Dementors. Therefore, each puppet tries his best, hoping to complete the task arranged by Lane perfectly. If you want to teach those evil enemies a profound lesson, there is no way out. Canary thought about it after a few days of experience and said, I found this creature called Dementor seems to be a colony creatures, and the old newspapers we picked up from the wizarding quarters mentioned that the number of them is increasing. I wonder if they will have their own nests like ants to reproduce, if there are any. Exterminating that lair completely should be able to teach those nasty dark wizards a lesson. This is a really good idea. Rose Crystal nodded. But how can we find out where? This monster does not look like a humanoid, but it is impossible for us to get the message from the prisoner's mouth. I think it's enough just to use this method. Canary thought about it and wanted to signal the sisters to come together, and then whispered his arrangements. The next day, these little puppets were scattered. Everyone followed a small group of Dementors to observe their movements. In just 3 days, they found this Dementor breeding base on the uninhabited island of the North Sea. Before, they touched the mound with Dementors in turns, and they were shocked to find that the mound was like an enlarged termite nest. and there were many Dementors staying quietly at the bottom of the nest. There, at the beginning, they thought that this was just the place where monsters like Dementors lived. At first, they were still curious about why this monster would sleep. But during an investigation by the mercury lamp, she saw a still Dementor split there into two black smoke plumes and then became two Dementors. Since then, the puppets have known that this place is actually a breeding ground for Dementors. What they don't know is that they are the first group of intelligent life to see the Dementors breeding in person. Usually with this ability of cluster Dementors, no one can break through heavy defenses and come to the core zone to see this, and the Dementors will only breed in the nest. When Newt's commander wrote "Where is the magical animal?" he wanted to find out how Dementors breed, but unfortunately he didn't. This is not because of the power gap. According to the theory of evolution, the Dementors from this world have adapted to evolve the ability to detect the souls of all creatures in this world and to eat happiness. But because this world has never appeared like a rose before, Crystal constructs life like this, so they can't recognize the puppets at all, and naturally can't effectively block them. Today, after observing for more than a week, Rose Crystal finally decided to take advantage of the number of Dementors gathered on the island when they reached their peak. Of course, this is also the reason for their better luck, but even Dementors, not so many of them will choose to shoot at this time, because the time agreed with Ryan is almost coming. They do not want to worry Ryan. The time came to 8:30 in the evening, and the puppets sitting at the table stood up and started to move. Rose Crystal came to the end. She put away all the things in this house, and then the magic destroyed the shelter they lived in Zhejiang for nearly a week. After doing all this, Rose Crystal walked outside and just saw the canary arranging tasks. "Young Buri, you are in charge of the magic circle at point F. Xwork Hyjing, you are in charge of the point at G." At this point she turned to look at the Rose Crystal that had just come out. "Rose Crystal, your task is the heaviest, because what you are responsible for is the main magic circle near the Dementor den in the middle of this island. If you are not sure, this point can be given up." "I checked, Brother Ryan gave your magic circle, without the main magic circle. That is, the accuracy is a bit worse when you magically attack for a while. There may be a fish that missed the net." "I'm sure." Rose Crystal nodded. "Furthermore, this is the first time I have left my older brother to complete the task. I don't want to leave any regrets." "Okay, www.mtlnovel.com. I can understand what you think." Canary nodded and elegantly lifted her skirt. "So, bonne chance Evas, French, good luck." "Thank you." Rose Crystal also gave a skirt ceremony, and then turned and flew towards the center of the island. Soon, she flew under the black dirt where the Dementors were living, and then waved her hand next to a stone. A gust of wind rolled across the ground, and the gravel used for camouflage was blown away by the wind. A gold plate with a size of 1.5 meters in diameter, painted with red cinnabar and full of small and large seal characters, is exposed. This is the position that Ryan gave to them in advance, and it is the kind of thunder penalty that has a killing bonus against dark creatures. Although the effect of this alchemy prop is more rigid than the release method of Ryan himself when he released the punishment, it has a lower power and more magic power. But the advantage is that it allows others to use this rather complicated magic. Standing in the center of the array, Rose Crystal turned out the amethyst sword and held it in front of her with both hands until the voice of the canary sounded deep in my mind. "Go ahead, sisters." "Yanu." Rose Crystal waved the crystal sword in her hand, and the other dolls also pronounced the password in Mandarin and waved the magic props in their hands. The wind was slowly blowing on the originally silent island, and the wind was getting bigger and bigger, which caused the surrounding sea water to beat the reefs of the island frantically, stirring up a lot of white waves. Strangely, just when the wind was blowing, the sky began to appear black broken clouds abnormally, and then these clouds began to gather above the giant mound of the island that looked like a Dementor hatchery, forming a dark cloud to crush the end of the city. A fatal attack on the Dementors is coming. Chapter 545. Goodbye Dementors. On the Dementor Island in the depths of the North Sea, countless Dementors fly around in the sky. It is like a black plastic bag dancing in the windy days in the city. The strange climate changes around them also alert these Dementors. They scouted around to try to find out the reasons for the changes in the external environment. Watching the Dementors collide in the sky like headless flies, the Rose Crystal is still calmly manipulating the array, just like she had judged before. These Dementors can't see their dolls, naturally neither will cause any hindrance to them. After the magic of the entire array under Rose Crystal's feet was full, she immediately showed in the connection of her soul that she was ready. After confirming that everyone has completed the first step, the canary as the commander issued an order to continue the operation. The wind rises. Rose Crystal growled and then waved the crystal sword in his hand to dance an ancient sacrificial dance, instilling the force of faith in the body through the dance to infuse the array underneath. When she was walking on the array like an elf, walking around in light and light steps, the power of faith she had collected as in the world of Song of Ice and Fire turned into a purple mist from her double. The feet flooded out and poured a little into the array under her feet. Soon the purple mist accumulated, but the sky was like an invisible wall that bound these mists within the range of the array, so that the Rose Crystal was wrapped in the purple mist. Raising hands and throwing driving the mist around is like dancing in the clouds. As the power of faith was injected, the golden disc under her feet began to buzz and tremble. Runes that were originally painted with cinnabar bright red and blood were gradually dyed into bright purple by the force of purple misty faith. When the last rune was completed, all the mist turned into a vortex and was sucked into the disc, as if everything just now was just a dream. But all this is not a dream. Rose Crystal also stopped her dance when the purple mist disappeared, and then held the sword above her head with both hands. Suddenly, there was a violent wind around her, and a tornado swirled around her. The tornado was turning faster and faster, and at the same time, a purple wire was mixed in the wind. Finally, the upper part of the tornado touched the dark clouds in the sky to form a wind column that seemed to communicate with the world, and there were countless purple lightnings around the wind column. From a distance, it looked like a long dragon dancing around the column and trying to climb into the sky. It is not just the rose crystal that has changed here. If someone can stand in the sky and penetrate the dark clouds to overlook the island, he will find that there are a total of 8 wind columns on the island. 7 of these wind columns are arranged on the island according to the direction of the Big Dipper, and the location of the rose crystal is the position of the North Star. The 8 wind columns began to permeate powerful energy outwards, and these energies gradually integrated into a huge energy field on the island. At this point in the cast, everything can't be concealed. The magical energy on the island provides targets for these dementors. A large number of dementors immediately formed a black torrent and rushed to the position of several wind columns, trying to prevent the final step of this horror magic from forming. But all this is just in vain. All dementors trying to get close to those wind columns will be completely wiped out of the world by the blue-violet current that surrounds them. The dementors who watched the impact from outside through the transparent wind wall stood up slightly at the corner of the rose crystal mouth, standing on the most central array of the wind column. Unlike the imagination, there is only a very weak wind in the center of the wind column, which can at most blow the puppet's hair. It's time for the last step. Rose crystal meditation, feeling the formation of the magic circle that enveloped the entire island and all the dementors. Finally, the magic circle was completely formed, and the dementors on the island and the whole island were completely wrapped in this huge magic circle. Some dementors tried to rush out of the island to escape, but they were quickly crushed by the wind of the island surrounded by lightning. Thunder. After feeling that everyone else was ready, Rose Crystal shouted with his sword handle in both hands and pointed the sword towards the sky. At the same time, he took out a bottle filled with silver sky silver and smashed it on the array. Others the same action was made in step. Tannian is quickly absorbed by the array, possibly because the injected energy is too large, and cracks are generated on the array. However, Tannian just made up for these cracks, allowing the array to release more powerful energy to the sky. The dark clouds in the sky immediately began to flash with electricity and light, accompanied by thunderous thunder. Seeing that the sky was overwhelming, the dementors who had previously attacked the wind column quickly returned to the black mound used as a breeding ground and hid, while releasing a large amount of black mist to cover the mound. Try to use the protection of the earth to resist this attack. After feeling the thunder and lightning accumulating in the sky to the desired level, Rose Crystal waved his sword and pointed at the black mound in sight. A large number of golden-purple lightnings instantly fell on the black soil like raindrops. The fog of the earth is eliminated layer by layer, and then the earth itself. With the disappearance of the earth slope, countless dementors hiding in it were also extinguished by the sky. But the sky thundered and eroded down like a flood of sand, until the breeding room was reinforced at the bottom of the whole nest for countless times and the last batch of dementors hidden in it disappeared. After tunnel stopped, there was only a burning black pit that could prove what once existed here. At the same time, the positions that had been overloaded before were completely scrapped, and the golden red smoke disappeared into the air. This time it seems that I've been overstretched. After completely eradicating the dementors, Rose Crystal's facial expression softened. She watched the disappearing market and put out her tongue mischievously. I hope my elder brother will not criticize me for breaking things. The Lion of Ryan was originally a precious alchemy item that can be used repeatedly. Each cost needs to be converted into the wealth of the wizarding world, at least 2,000 gallons. But what he didn't expect was that the puppets used the power of faith at all costs to complete the task, which directly led to all the positions being completely scrapped due to overload. For Rose Crystals, on the one hand, completing the task of Ryan all you owe Zen in their minds is the value of their survival www.mplnovel.com, so they will go all out when doing things. On the other hand, they have lived with 2 good alchemists since they were created, so they don't think how precious this kind of alchemy road is to the outside world. In particular, these puppets have visited teacher Liu Zen and accumulated thousands of years of wealth, as well as the golden mountains and silver seas that Ryan has saved in many worlds. In this case, they naturally will not pay too much attention to the loss of magic items during battle. After the thunder and lightning were completely over, the puppets who had operated the magic circle everywhere on the island gathered together and looked at a huge black pit that was emitting smoke. Is this a success? The most childish young berry probe looked carefully at the deep pit. No problem, we must have succeeded. The elder sister's mercury lamp looked at it carefully and said, now we can go back. and my father should come out of the laboratory for such a long time. That's great. Several other Rose girls said happily. Even Xquak Haijing, who had always been the Sanwu girl, picked up the corners of her mouth delicately. Okay, let's go first. I'll clean it up and leave, Rose Crystal said as she opened the other puppets back home, and then called out Jill to wipe out the little ones that weren't destroyed by Tanlai. Trace. Let's go home. It feels great to complete the task. After confirming everything is okay, Rose Crystal opened the door to the Wanji grocery store and walked in with Jill. But I will report to my elder brother tomorrow. It's a little late today, maybe he has rested. After the light door disappeared, the island was silent, as if no one had ever appeared here. Chapter 546, Memory and Past. Rose Crystal, who was thought to have rested on a small island in the North Sea, was actually not as restful as she thought. He was sitting in the common room to check the next issue of Look, This Is Mull. Hermione sitting opposite him looked at the Metamorphosis book from the World of Beauty and the Beast. After mastering the power of the rules, she found a lot from this book from Ningfuel's New Places worth studying. And on the sofa in the distance, Ron was rushing his homework. During the previous hospitalization period, he left a lot of homework. He must now make up the content of these classes, otherwise, after the final exam, he will be approved by Mrs. Weasley for a summer vacation. Why hasn't Harry returned yet? Ron asked after looking up the notes he had lent him before. At this time, it was already late at night, and only 3 of them were left in the common room. Ryan opened the door of the common room without answering, and then Harry walked in with a frustrated look. What happened? Ron asked, looking at his friend's complexion. Nothing. It's just that I didn't complete the task given to me by Professor Dumbledore, so that the course can't continue now. Harry sat on the sofa tiredly, and then began to tell Ryan that they were in the Principal Dumbledore today. The detailed course of the class there. At 8 o'clock in the evening, when the puppets decided on the attack time, Harry also stepped into the principal's office, and he just saw Professor Trelawney arguing with the Principal Dumbledore, because Trelawney hopes to get rid of the Fearon's horse, and Principal Dumbledore rejects her unreasonable request. After Professor Trelawney pushed Harry angrily away and disappeared on the spiral staircase, Dumbledore greeted Harry and closed the door to sit in the old seat at Dumbledore's table. Harry tried to ask Professor Trelawney about it, but Professor Dumbledore only brought it back after a brief introduction. Harry, don't worry about my teacher now. We have more important things to talk about. First of all, did you do the homework I arranged in the previous lesson? Harry remembered suddenly, because of the Phantom class, Quidditch game, Ron poisoning, his skull fracture, and before trying to figure out what Malfoy was doing, he almost forgot that Dumbledore asked him to do it. In Slughorn's memory, well, I really didn't find a way to make him speak, because Ryan reminded me that if I asked him directly, he would definitely not want to answer me. I would make him more vigilant. This thing is completely messed up, so during this time I have been thinking of a way to ensure that he tells the truth, because I know I will not have a second chance. Oh, your friend is right. Dumbledore stared at Harry from above the half-moon-shaped spectacle lens, and Harry felt a sense of being seen through again. You think you have done your best? Yes. Have you fully utilized your ingenuity? Have you tried all the ideas? Harry's words were jammed. He did think of many ways, but he didn't implement them for various reasons. The main reason is that he did not put this matter in the most important position. Now when Dumbledore asked, he felt a sense of self-control. I know that you have recently met many things, such as your friend being poisoned, and then yourself injured. I also understand how excited young people like you were when you were the captain of the Quidditch team for the first time. But I think I have told you how important that memory is. In fact, that is the most critical memory. Without it, we will only waste time. Dumbledore said these words in a very normal tone, just like the weather today, but Harry felt a strong sense of shame struck him. He would rather Professor Dumbledore yell at him instead of expressing his heartless disappointment like this. Harry desperately wanted to argue, but Dumbledore reached out to stop him. I know, you will say you are busy, but I still hope you can mention this matter to the premises from now on. Without that memory, it would be meaningless for us to take classes in the future. I will, sir, I will get it, Harry said eagerly as if he had caught a life-saving straw. At this time, Dumbledore finally crossed the topic and entered today's topic. They first reviewed the content of the previous lesson. Voldemort killed his father and grandparents, making people think that his uncle did it. Then he returned to Hogwarts and asked Professor Slughorn about the Horcrux. Today's lesson, we're going to look at the last memory I've collected. What you need to know is that after Tom became Voldemort, he consciously erased the traces he had experienced. Finding someone who can remember adult Voldemort is almost an impossible thing. In fact, I doubt whether there is a living person besides himself who can tell us in detail about his life after leaving Hogwarts. However, with my efforts, I still found these 2 memories. After speaking, Dumbledore pointed to 2 small crystal bottles shining next to the meditation basin on the table. I told you when I first taught you separately that we will enter the field of speculation and speculation. Thankfully, with the help of your friend Ryan, I can now basically understand what is going on in these memories. This makes some guesses no longer guesses, but also brings us closer to the truth. A step. Ryan, Harry said incredulously. Yes. Dumbledore glanced at Harry sitting in front of him. Although he is busy this year, his wisdom and strength have helped me a lot. After you have read these memories, I will tell you specifically what happened. Harry felt more ashamed at this moment, but Dumbledore didn't seem to pay attention to this. He told Harry that Lord Voldemort was optimistic about his future after graduating from school with excellent results. Several teachers suggested that he enter the Ministry of Magic and he was willing to introduce him actively, but he refused. Later, the teachers learned that Voldemort went to work in Bogenbock. www.mplnovel.com. Bogenbock? Harry said in amazement. Bogenbock. Dumbledore said quietly. I didn't know what this was for, but with the help of Lane, I figured out why. But in fact his first goal was not to work there. Voldemort first approached my former principal and asked if he could stay at Hogwarts to coach. He wants to stay here? Harry was shocked. In his mind, an ambitionist like Voldemort should not be willing to stay in this ancient castle all day. I can understand, Dumbledore said. First of all, this castle is the first place to feel his home, and it is the only place. Secondly, this castle has a long history. Voldemort believes that he can find the buried treasure from here. And the last point is that he is not the kind of person who can stay in school all his life. I think he sees this as a good place to recruit and buy horses. He can pull himself up for a team. Fortunately, he didn't get the job. Harry's tone revealed happiness. Yes. The principal at the time, Professor Debete, said he was only 18 years old and too young, but he was welcome to apply again after 2 years if he still wanted to teach. I also wrote a letter to the principal at the time, suggesting that Amando should not hire him. Then Voldemort went to Bogenbock, and all the teachers who admired him said it was a pity. But what he did unexpectedly well in that shop, you know, Harry, this shop specializes in all kinds of magic items. Voldemort was sent to persuade others to gift the treasure to the shop for sale. It is said that he was particularly good at this matter, I believe. Harry couldn't help saying, yeah, Dumbledore said with a slight smile. Now we should go to the tropic and look at the memories of the House of Hauchi. Chapter 547, Memory and Past. The first memory Harry saw today with Professor Dumbledore was the memory of the House of Hauchi. Her owner was a very old and very rich witch named Hepzibah Smith. At that time, Voldemort, who was also called Tom Riddle, gained the trust of this eccentric but wealthy old lady by virtue of his face value and playful means. At one of their meetings, the old lady proudly showed Tom her treasures, the gold cup from Hufflepuff from her ancestor and the Slytherin pendant box. Then she saw the red light flashing in Tom's eyes, but she thought it was just light. This was a fatal mistake. Dumbledore told Harry Hepzibah Smith died 2 days later. The Ministry of Magic determined that the House of Hauchi had made a mistake in her hostess' evening drink of cocoa. Poison was put. Harry firmly believed that this was not possible. He thought that Voldemort had tampered with the memory of the House of Hauchi, just like morphine. Dumbledore accepted his inference. When Hauchi was convicted, Hepzibah's family discovered that her 2 most valuable treasures had been lost. At the same time, the clerk in Bogenbock, the young man who often visited Hepzibah and would please her like that, has resigned and disappeared. Dumbledore said, Harry, this time I need to remind you of some details in the story. Voldemort committed another murder. This time he didn't retaliate, but for profit. He wanted the poor old lady to give the 2 treasures he looked at. Just like he snatched other children from the orphanage, just like he stole his uncle's ring, this time he stole Hepzibah's cup and pendant. Even I have some evidence that Voldemort did not kill much in order to hide himself when he was not strong in the early days. The first killing was a murder of his father's family, and the second was the accidental killing of a monster with a basilisk. Hogwarts student. And what we are seeing now is his 3rd murder, and the first murder after leaving school. Dumbledore said slowly. But, Harry said with a frown, this is crazy. Taking such a big risk, killing an innocent person, losing his job, or even leaving in disbelief, just for maybe. Dumbledore said, but Voldemort thinks he is a descendant of one of the Hogwarts 4 giants and has a great pedigree. It is understandable that there is a special preference for the relics of these precious big 4. Then Dumbledore shared his memory with Harry, which was the memory of Dumbledore's rejection of Voldemort, who had been disfigured by black magic, to teach at the school. Why? After looking at the memory, Harry looked up at Dumbledore's face. Why did he come back? Are you clear? Basically figured it out, thanks to your friend Ryan, who found something from the school that confirmed my guess and gave me a new understanding of some of Voldemort's practices. I think you've already learned from Ryan. I learned what the Horcrux is there, but I still lack the most important piece of puzzle. When you get the memory of Professor Slughorn, I will tell you all these things, Harry. Dumbledore said. After listening to Harry's narration, Ron looked at Ryan with shocked eyes. I can't believe it, buddy. You can really help Professor Dumbledore, but can you tell me your specific what helped the principal? When his words fell, Harry also turned his head to look at Ryan, and seemed interested in Ron's questions. No, I can't. Lane smiled and shook his head gently. Since Principal Dumbledore doesn't want you to know, then it must make sense. The information I have now is not comprehensive. If I tell you what I know, I worry that the incomplete information may give you a wrong signal. Okay. Harry nodded helplessly. I think I can only think of a way to get that vital memory from Slughorn as soon as possible. Well, then I can only wish you good luck. Ryan sent a heartfelt blessing to him. He did not know that the 8-eyed giant spiders in the Forbidden Forest had been cleaned up. Harry should be this time. How to get that memory? Over the next week, Harry racked his brains thinking about how to make Slughorn hand over real memories, and even from time to ask Ryan to discuss the way, but there weren't many good ideas. However, in the subconscious Mad Prince's potion textbook, Harry found an interesting magic. This magic was recorded in the blank space of the textbook, and a spell, Sectum Sempra, was written, and there was to the enemy below 3 funny words. He initially wanted to find a place to practice on his own, but after thinking of the words of Ryan and Hermione before, he picked up the textbook and looked for Ryan, who was finishing his thesis, and wanted him to identify the magic. The reason for not looking for Hermione is that if Hermione is found, she must be greeted by a lot of preaching. Sectum Sempra? Ryan followed Harry to the sofa where he sat and looked at the spell. He found that he couldn't remember what the spell was. After all, he mainly retranslated novels and some transliterated spells in his last life. You can recognize it quickly, such as Avada, but now he can't really remember what it is. Yes, wait for me, Ryan said as he took out a gold plate inlaid with a circle of mithril characters, then pulled out his wand and read the mantra in the middle of the gold plate. www.mtlnovel.com. In an instant, a crack appeared in the center of the gold plate, and at the same time, the 2 runes turned into blood red and black near the place where the gold plate held near Ryan's right hand. It turned out to be this. Ryan finally figured out which one was the spell. This should be the very famous godless shadow in the legend. It is a pity that the Chinese version of the novel used a free translation on this mantra, so he didn't recognize it when he saw it. What? Harry asked curiously. He didn't hear Ryan whispering softly. That's it. This magic is an offensive spell that can form a wound on the human body or object like a sword. Ryan put away the gold plate and said to Harry, it sounds okay. It's a spell like a cutting spell, right? Harry said excitedly. Not just that. Ryan pointed out the key point. The biggest difference between this magic and the cutting spell is that the part damaged by the spell cannot be regenerated by any means, but it can be healed by the anti-curse. It should be regarded as a more dangerous black magic. I personally recommend that you do not master the anti-curse before the spell. Don't use this spell on your classmates. Is this the way it is? Harry showed a lingering expression. He remembered the hand Sirius lost forever. Thank you so much. Otherwise I will definitely make a big mistake. So as I said last time, whether it's a curse or a potion, we'd better make sure of their effectiveness before using it. Otherwise, it's just a trivial matter if we don't get the effect we want. The problem is really big when it comes to bad reaction, Ryan urged seriously, and then returned to his original seat to write a few homework assignments with Hermione. Chapter 548, Investigation Result. Generally, there are not many people in the common room after dinner. Most of them have their own things to do. However, after researching Shenfeng Yuanying today, Ryan found that there was a bit of noise around him. After raising his head and looking around the common room, he found out that now all of them are 6th graders. What excites everyone is a new notice posted on the bulletin board that informs the date of the Phantom Appearance test. Before the first exam, April 21st, students over the age of the 17th of May sign up for special training in Hogsmeade, with strict supervision. This matter has nothing to do with Ryan, because he is on his birthday in May, and even now his illusion is so skillful that he has to wait for the second exam. Harry was the same as him, but Harry took the exam later, and it would take July to take the exam. The worst thing is Ron, who is the oldest in this place. But the age above the Phantom Shift did not give him an advantage, because he did not succeed in class once. At this point, he was not as good as Harry. At least in the last class, Harry successfully appeared in the wooden circle for the first time. After figuring out the danger of Shenfeng's shadowlessness, Harry began to think hard about how to get Slughorn's memory. In yesterday's discussion, he has learned from Hermione that there is only one way to force others to do what you want them to do, and that is the soul capture. But Ryan told him that at his level, he couldn't control Professor Slughorn, so he is not recommended to use this stupid method. Harry had to admit that Ryan's judgment was correct. The person who can be the Dean of Slytherin College in Hogwarts for a long time is definitely a top wizard in the magic world, and definitely not a little wizard like him who has no adulthood. It can be controlled by the soul-taking spell. Ryan, do you really have no magic or potion to pry Slughorn's mouth? After thinking for a while that the brain was chaotic, Harry stood up and walked to the table where Ryan and Hermione were sitting again. Asked, really not, Harry, Lane said helplessly. Unless we can really control Slughorn, then there will be some hope for some irreversible dangerous means afterwards. Ryan's hand was tapped here by Hermione. Harry, don't listen to Ryan talking nonsense there. Hermione glared at Ryan and turned to Harry. Dumbledore said that only you can get that memory, which definitely means that you can convince Slughorn and others can't. It's not a question of giving him potions or using spells. Professor Liggio has done it himself long ago, and does not need you at all. Over time, Fewer people in the common room. After Harry reluctantly closed the Half-Blood Prince's potion book, he discovered that only him, Ryan, Ron, and Hermione were left in the common room. Ginny finished her homework 3 minutes ago and went to rest. Because Ginny will take the OWL's exam this year, she is also very busy. At this moment, there was a crackling noise in the empty common room. Dobby appeared in front of the 3 men, his hat made of a hood tilted aside. Harry Potter said that he would always report Malfoy's movements to him, so Dobby came to see Harry Potter coming to report on his previous observations. Then did you find me now because of what you found? Harry asked eagerly. Draco Malfoy is a bad boy. Dobby screamed angrily. A bad boy? Hee. Speaking of this, Dobby shivered from the tassels all over the teapot cover to the tip of the sock, and then he rushed to the fire, as if to jump in. Fortunately, Ryan's eyes caught him quickly. After struggling for a few seconds, Dobby softened and thanked Ryan. Thank you. Dobby is still hard to say bad things about the old master. This is normal, you may need to adapt more, Lane said after putting Dobby on the ground. Okay, if you have any new discoveries, hurry up and tell them. This is the key. That's it. Dobby looked at Harry with big eyes. Dobby didn't find Malfoy violating any rules, but he was still careful to prevent people from discovering what he did. He often took different students to the 8th floor. They sent him a whistle, and he walked into the room where he asked, I should have thought about it. Harry slapped his forehead with his palm. Most of the places in Hogwarts will appear on the Living Point map, only the request room I have never seen on the map. I should have thought of this long ago. Yes, Dobby, you saw the Ma. What did Fu do? No, Harry Potter, this is impossible, Dobby said. Obviously Umbridge last year, Harry asked strangely. That's because you showed whistleblowers last year. Lane said. The Bingwu actually has the effect of a confidential room. Think about it. Before the whistleblower, neither Filch nor Umbridge used so much energy to finally find you. And now we do not know Malfoy what the room looked like when I went in, so naturally there was no way to enter the place he had entered before to see what he did. There will be a way, Harry said confidently, and then he bowed his head. You did a great job, Dobby. Thank you, Harry Potter, sir. Dobby screamed happily before picking up a small leather pocket and handing it to Ryan. And Mr. Ryan Liang, thank you for these magic props. Otherwise, I might have to follow Malfoy for days and nights without sleeping. It's nothing. This is what I should do. Ryan took the leather pocket and Dobby left after bowing to Ryan. I think I know what's going on now. Maybe I will catch Malfoy right away, Harry said excitedly. Just wait for Malfoy to block him when he enters the request room. It sounds good, but we still have too few people, Ron pointed out keenly. Don't forget that Dobby said that Malfoy brought a different person every time. If Malfoy was partying with a group of people, not only would we, the people, not know what conspiracy he was doing, but also make him alert. You don't need to worry about this. Lane thought for a moment. www.mplnovel.com. According to Harry's previous statement, Malfoy was carrying out a huge conspiracy. Not even Snape told. In this case, I don't think he will find a large group of people to do things. It is important to know that the more people involved in such conspiracy, the more prone to problems. Then what do you think it is all about? Ron asked puzzled. I guess it's a compound soup, Ryan explained. This will explain what is going on. In fact, what he should have been looking for was Crab and Goyle before, just letting them drink a compound soup with different people's hair. That's true. Harry's eyes widened suddenly. Malfoy is really cunning, and he doesn't even want people to see Crab and Goyle always appearing there to be suspicious. And when we took the first potions lesson, there was a whole pot of compound soup. It's easy to get the medicine I need from inside. So before I saw that the 2 little girls who followed Malfoy were Crab and Goyle, Ron said with a big laugh. God. No wonder they haven't been happy recently. Disguised as girls. But his laughter quickly diminished, as Ryan looked at him with a discomforted face. Okay, let's get the business right. Ron raised his face. Why would the 2 of them listen to Malfoy? They should strongly resist. It's enough as long as Malfoy reveals the dark magic mark on his arm, Harry said excitedly. The official Death Eaters always have some appeal from the Slytherin villains. Harry, what you need to pay attention to now is the most critical memory. That is the core of defeating the mysterious man, Lane said while tidying up the table. And Malfoy, I believe that with the principal's control of the school, he should not cause much harm. Chapter 549, Explore. At breakfast the next morning, Ryan discovered that Harry had obviously not taken his exhortations to bed seriously. Still hoping to figure out what Malfoy was doing, Ryan could only shrug and let him go. But he made up his mind to find a chance to put the array made a few days ago under the disappearance cabinet, and to give a little more gift to the Death Eaters who might assault through the disappearance cabinet. Hermione, is there any special news this morning? Ryan asked Hermione, who was reading the newspaper. Since the little puppets raided a Dementor a week ago, Ryan has always wanted to see the news. Unfortunately, recently the newspaper never mentioned it. There is a news today. Hermione naturally knew what the little puppets had done before. When Rose Crystal had no classes the next afternoon after they returned, she also followed Ryan in the palace of the Lord of the Rings World River Valley City. A banquet was held to entertain these cute little guys. In that banquet, Ryan also tasted the top food in the Lord of the Rings for the first time, because just a few days ago, A few hobbits were brought by the various new flora and fauna brought by Ryan in the Valley City. Attracted, so nature likes to stay at home. They chose a few representatives to follow a caravan through the misty mountains that have been cleaned up and come here. But after coming to River Valley City, these hobbit talents discovered that there are too many things they want to enter the industrialized River Valley City. Even if the specialty products they bring are sold at a good price here, but the money is still far from what they want. The money at most allows them to buy 1/10 of the things they want to buy. In this case, under the suggestion of the administrative officer of River Valley City, they decided to open a small restaurant here to save money. After hearing about this, Ryan naturally asked these top chefs to prepare a big meal for the puppets. Therefore, after knowing the accomplishments of Rose Crystal at the banquet, Hermione also paid attention to the newspaper every day, hoping to see the reaction of the outside world after the little dolls did a major event last time, but unfortunately more than a week ago in time, there was no special response from the outside world. It's as if those Dementors are not important at all. Finally, today, Hermione found a report on this. She took a sip of hot milk and said, "Look at this report, it should be the best news recently. The shadows covering the British Isles have finally disappeared. By the way, within the jurisdiction of the British Ministry of Magic, there have been no reports or sightings of Dementors for a week." Rose Crystal, they shouldn't have cleaned up all the Dementors? Hermione asked her question through the Phoenix brand. Rose Crystal can say at the banquet that according to Canary analysis, their raid could kill up to 80% of the Dementors. So where did the remaining Dementors go? I guess I was scared. Ryan replied in the same way. Because I studied this kind of creature in the 3rd grade. They seem to be collective intelligent creatures like ants and bees. When they gather to a certain number of IQs, not worse than humans. After most of the same kind died inexplicably in a short period of time, the rest will naturally be hidden. The news is very good. Ron swallowed the bacon in his mouth and looked at Hermione. He didn't know that Ryan and Hermione communicated in a way he didn't understand. What news? Is there someone we know about something wrong? So you seem so nervous that you don't continue with the news in the newspaper. Oh, no. Hermione glanced at the next news. Someone we know appears in the newspaper. But I'm not so good about what is going on, she said, an embarrassed expression after she finished. Who? Harry, who was eager to find out Malfoy's conspiracy, also asked with concern, any news about acquaintances in such a chaotic era is worth noting. Not the victim, Hermione said. It was Mundungus, who was arrested and sent to Azkaban. It was said that it was a burglary dressed as a corpse. The acquaintance of Principal Dumbledore was. The name of Octavie Pepper is missing. The news behind is even worse. A 9-year-old boy was arrested in an attempt to kill his grandparents. Feeling that Death Eaters are more and more breaking through the bottom line of human nature, imposing a 9-year-old kid on him to kill his loved ones. Can the guy who does this kind of thing be called a human? Lane was angry to say, of course not. Hermione should be reconciled. This kind of scum is estimated to be only influenced by the great Merlin. I think the only thing we can do is send the garbage to meet Merlin. After the breakfast time, the atmosphere on the dining table seemed very depressed. Everyone silently finished breakfast. After eating breakfast, Ryan took Hermione and went to the alchemy laboratory, but this time they were not trying to go to the alchemy experiment as usual, but to study the Wonji grocery store itself in order to go to the Wonji grocery store. This is an idea that Ryan suddenly emerged after mastering the rules, because the Wonji grocery store is the source of his power and the greatest dependence, so he believes that if he can truly analyze this thing, then his own power will definitely have a great progress. Unfortunately, the facts gave him a blow when he first studied. He found that his level was no different from the ignorant newcomer when facing the mysterious creations beyond the normal range, such as Wonji grocery store. Even when he started, I don't know where to start. After spending a lot of effort, Ryan finally decided to use the door of the Wonji grocery store, that is, the main body of the space door, as a breakthrough point. Obviously, this breakthrough point was the right one. During Ryan's continuous research, he finally got some feedback from this space door by some means. Today, Ryan came here with Hermione just to be able to further research this door with her help. What should I do? Hermione, who was brought to the door, asked curiously. After listening to Ryan's explanation, she was eager to try the new knowledge. www.mplnovel.com. Especially she knows this fan. The knowledge contained in the door is far deeper than all the knowledge she has been exposed to before. That's what it is, Ryan said, pointing at the mithril board on the ground. The mithril board was carved with complicated grooves, and Hermione distinguished for a long time before recognizing that this should be some kind of alchemy formation, but the complexity of the runes on it was something she had never seen before. Ryan's explanation soon proved this point. This is also the first time I have designed such a complex alchemy array. After a while, the lines of the alchemy array will be filled by me with sky silver. Then you need to use all the rules. You have to fully urge this magic array when the magic on the door resonates with the space door. Do your best to record what appears on the door. In the previous experiment, Ryan used this analysis to resonate with the energy of the alchemy array to finally provoke the reaction of the space door. Unfortunately, after a lot of mysterious symbols and lines appeared on the door, Ryan discovered that these things contained a lot of bits. The mysterious power of quite high order is not memorized by simple memory. Even at his current level, he can only record the simplest message above when he is running the regular force at full strength. But Ryan found that he couldn't be distracted. The reason why the reconnaissance alchemy array could resonate with a space gate is because Ryan used the power of the rules to burn the sky silver to barely do it. Symbol. This is why he called Hermione to work together to complete the study. I'm ready. Hermione mastered the operation of the position after 2 simple attempts. After she signaled that she was ready, she began to exert her magic. She was impregnated into a deep red sky silver by Hermione's death force. Once again flowing on the market, a new round of experiments began. Chapter 550. New plan. No. On the 5th day of research at the 1G grocery store, Ryan grabbed her hair in frustration after recognizing the failure again. Originally he thought that he could record the simplest mysterious symbols and lines on the door to start researching, but the experience of the past few days told him that these things are not enough. He can perceive the knowledge contained in these things. However, after careful study, it was found that these contents are like a mist with him. No matter how hard you can't get closer. Is this because we don't have enough control groups, so we can't recognize these completely independent symbols and lines? Hermione, who seemed to have some shaggy hair, proposed a few days because he was too busy studying to care about tidying up himself. Opinion. Just like many ancient characters now become dead characters without a control group, no one can decipher it. But the problem is that these things are a manifestation of certain rules between heaven and earth, and are not derived from the words of a civilization. Ryan shook his head. So theoretically there can be no control group. Control group. Ryan suddenly lit up here. Wait, I thought, although these symbols have no control text, we can go to see the second level use of these symbols, and then we can reverse these symbols. I was stupid before, but I didn't think of this. Hermione, thank you so much, if it weren't for your prompt. Speaking of which, Ryan hugged Hermione and kissed her. After a long time, the two talents separated. It's true, I haven't brushed my teeth for days. Hermione whispered a little shyly when Ryan let go, but soon the desire for knowledge made her overcome her inner shyness, and she turned blushing. Face looked at Ryan. Well, can you tell me what you think of it? I'm still a bit confused now. That's it, Ryan said, taking Hermione's hand and sitting on the chair together. I was still fascinated by this new knowledge. In fact, it is difficult to study the door directly at my level. Even the simplest part will not work. If this space is not closely connected with me, I think I might be in great danger because of studying knowledge beyond my own ability. Hermione nodded, and she and Luna learned how Luna's mother died during the afternoon tea shortly after the establishment of the book club. From that time, she knew that if she pursued more than she could pay, nothing can be more rewarding than failure, and sometimes even pays for your own life. But now I think that I can study these runes on the door from the side by studying the transworld transmission function of this space, Ryan said with some excitement. My previous research did not mean that there was no result at all. After all, this grocery store is closely connected with me, so I can barely know that these mysterious symbols and lines on the door are the secret that this place can drive us across the world. Where, even if we can carefully study the simplest part of this force that crosses the world, then we can take a big step forward in the mastery of space. But, how do we get in touch? Hermione looked confused. Every time you walk through the door for only a moment, there is no trace of power exposed at all. I don't think this process can figure out something. No. Ryan shook his head. Don't forget, in addition to the normal way of crossing, we have another kind of time that is long enough for us to study these things. At this point, Lane imitated the headmaster and blinked at Hermione. Thinking of it, Hermione said excitedly with a hand on her chest. That's the method you used when you took me to escape in the Brazilian temple. The 2 days ago I met Sister Belle. Her son is really cute. Yes, that's the way. Ryan hurriedly pulled her thoughts back after discovering that Hermione began to digress. So we will tidy up a little while, and then start to discover a new world together. It sounds great. Hermione nodded. Anyway, now we have nothing urgent to deal with. As for time, for others, we just disappeared for an hour. After a good day's rest in the World Palace of Song of Ice and Fire, Ryan and Hermione launched the emergency escape force. After a familiar murmur similar to the plane taking off and landing, Ryan once again experienced a kind of strong external force pulling. Because it was still 2 people this time, the magic balance of the space channel was still broken. But the space turbulence that could cause them fatal damage in the 2nd grade is no longer so dangerous. While easily dissipating part of their energy to build a magic barrier to block these tearing forces, they began to disperse their power to the surroundings and began to study the power of the space directly exposed to them. This is much simpler than the mysterious knowledge on that door. Ryan began to quickly record the knowledge related to the door and space of the grocery store in this escape passage. Finally, when their feet set foot on a solid land again, they also completed all records about the space knowledge in the escape route. This journey is still too short, Hermione complained in a low voice. I still have a lot of things to make clear. It's okay, I have recorded all of them. My guess is right. The knowledge in the space channel can really be used as a key, Let us master the method of studying those complicated graphics. Ling comforted, and there is good news, we are indeed stronger than in the past. At least a few years ago, we felt that this channel was too long. Yeah, time passes quickly. Hermione also sighed and asked afterwards. This is where? Ryan also looked at their location at this time. Unlike the previous ones that often appeared in places full of nature and wildness or full of a long history, they now have a strong modern atmosphere. To be precise, they are on a fast-moving subway, and through the window they see a white light in the dark tunnel from time to time flying backwards. Maybe it's because it's not the peak period now. People in the subway are scattered and there are many seats. Even in the carriage where they were, there were only a few people scattered. These people were either listening to music or reading the newspaper. They didn't find two more people in the carriage. Welcome to New York. Ryan gently read an advertisement in the subway car. www.mplnovel.com. We are now in the subway in New York. Is the Big Apple? Sounds great. I always wanted to visit this city once, especially the Metropolitan Museum and Central Park. Unfortunately, I didn't have time before. Now visiting in New York is also around me. Come and see the dream. Hermione looked a little happy, but Ryan was nervous, because in countless movies New York is always the primary target of destruction, and he knows that there are more than 20 stories of New York being destroyed. Especially this teleportation is a random teleportation. He does not know if he has come to a very dangerous world. The only thing that is thankful is that New York in some worlds is very different from normal New York in architecture. Ryan decided to get off at the next stop and go to the ground to see which world this world is. Probably, if it is too dangerous, he will leave New York as fast as possible to find a remote place to hide, and then wait for the cooling time to end. This world. Just as Ryan was thinking, suddenly there was a sound of glass shattering next to him. A man in a suit broke the glass behind the last carriage of the subway and rolled in.